Hello guys, welcome to Anafictionif. Support the author Highschool DxD, Epoch, SinTheAuthor. What if Issei lost his soul and got harem? Let's begin. Sounds of a ringing bell sung out, followed by students flooding out of a school building out into the front courtyard. It was lunchtime, meaning it was their free period to hang out with friends and have fun, eat their food and such. With the cafeteria packed with the sound of students, it would be hard to distinguish what each one was saying. At a particularly packed table, numerous students seemingly gathered around one individual, and that's how I took down McCarthy's. Some expressed awe and impression through simple O's, some even whistled and cheered him. That's Jason for you. Jason was a young man with a tall build, obviously built for football. As the famous quarterback he was at St. Michael's, as he wore a confident grin that meshed well with his golden hair. With his arm around a girl, seemingly his girlfriend, Jason leaned back with a puffed chest. What else do you expect? McCarthy was an arrogant that needed to learn his place. That's what he gets for messing with the golden bull. You get the horns. Raising his hand to his head, the blonde mimics the horns of a bull and huffs as if acting like one, causing some to laugh and agree with his words. Chuckling to himself, his intense green eyes find themselves upon a smaller boy that looked happy just to be here yet jittery. Yo Max. Jumping at being spoken to by Jason, the boy sputtered out. Why wise? His response made some chuckle. I need you to get me something. I need to borrow some money for a gift for my girl. Mind helping a bro? Max nodded, albeit hesitantly, but he complied when he saw the look in Jason's eyes that wouldn't take no for an answer. Pulling out the $40 he was given for the week out of his wallet. Snatching it out of Max's hand, he stuffed the money into his pocket without looking back at Max, only saying thanks as he continued to speak to everyone around him. Meanwhile, at another table nearby, another boy with brown hair saw what happened, furrowing his brows as he watched Max get money taken by Jason and finding it unjustful. Hey! The boy's yell rendered the cafeteria silent, directing everyone's attention onto him, including Jason's. What? Walking from his table to in front of the blonde, the boy named David stood before where the former sat with hands on his hips. That money. It belongs to Max, not you. He stood confident and fearless, holding out his hand as if saying to Jason to give the money to him, provoking the latter to raise a brow. Grinning wider, the football player got up from his seat, and it was evident that he was much bigger than David, being a full foot and half taller than Brunette. What are you going to do if I don't? Cracking his knuckles, some of the boys with him also stood up and surrounded David from all sides. Nervous with his confidence now gone, the young man tries to keep up his bravado despite David's obvious fears showing through it. "Tool, get it back from you." David suddenly hunched over after Jason's fist buried itself in his gut, any air within his lungs from his body, and rendering the boy onto his knees, struggling to get his breath back as coughs choked from David's throat. A large hand grabs at David's hair and tightens into a grip, pulling up the boy closer to Jason's level as he tightens his hand even more. That causes a pained cry to escape the former. Should have just backed off. With his other hand already raised, it was aimed for David's contorted face with no intention of holding back, closing the distance in seconds. The chocolate brown eyes of David flutter open, widening in fear before relaxing just an inch when he realizes Jason's fist hadn't hit and was in front of his face, quickly finding the reason. Somehow standing within the circle was yet another young man that had long black hair, one of his own hands gripping the wrist of Jason. It was him that stopped Jason's fist from hurting David's face. I wouldn't do that if I were you. Despite the situation, he sounded like he didn't have much energy, as if he didn't want to be here. And what are you going to do, coma boy? One of the boys surrounding them threw himself at the ravenet, only to fall onto his face when he stepped aside, the grip on Jason's wrist still present. Deep melancholic eyes like the sea, they bore into Jason's trembling green orbs. Raising his grip on David's hair and stepping back, those eyes proving themselves unsettling to the much taller boy as he clicked his tongue. Let's leave, guys. Though shocked, they nodded, keeping a reasonable distance between themselves and the ravenet as they followed after Jason. Meanwhile, David struggled to stand and brought up a hand. Wait. The money. A hand gripped his shoulder, a silent sign to give it up as David met those same eyes that made someone like Jason step away. Later, that same young man was sitting within a stairwell by a window, his gaze focused on the people outside. It's still there. Murmuring under his breath, the young man tilted his gaze to something besides him. Status window. Name Charles Lawrence. Status none. Rank low class. Sacred gear locked. Parameters. Strength E, endurance E. Agility E, mana E. Luck E. Yes, that's right. Currently the young man was looking at a status window that no one can see, listing things such as his name to even his parameters. Sacred gear. Where have I heard of that? Sighing, the young man flicked his hand to get rid of the window. Leaning back against the window frame as the sight outside shifted to the reflection of himself. Charles Lawrence. Flashback. Within a hospital room and machines beside a bed, there laid a young man with long black hair pooling across his bed like an ebony river, shaking blue eyes at something in front of him as he spoke. You've got to be kidding me. Welcome, player. Congratulations on your reincarnation. The bed creaked as he slumped back, the ravenet holding a hand to his head with tightly closed eyes. I must be hallucinating. Yeah, that's it. A door leading into the hospital room opened, and stepped a female doctor wearing a coat and board in hand. Walking over to his side, she checked the floor while speaking. Good afternoon, Mr. Lawrence. You had us worried there for a second. His face frowned. My name isn't Lawrence. Suddenly the door bursted open again, this time being another woman only wearing a business suit that looked like a mess as the woman pushed past the doctor and grabbed the young man's hand. Charles. Oh my gosh, look at you. What happened? Did somebody do this? How? The doctor cut in. Hold on there. I'm assuming you're Mr. Lawrence's guardian, yes? Finally taking notice of the doctor, the woman cleared her throat with flushed cheeks. Why wise? I'm his aunt, Marianne Lawrence. Meanwhile the young man laid on the bed with confusion all over his face. I have an aunt? Wait, since when is my last name Lawrence? Did she call me Charles's? Then he thought about the screen floating in front of him that no one has acknowledged, seeing the words written on there, congratulations on reincarnation. Have I seriously reincarnated? Shaking his head, Charles noticed the woman that may be his aunt, looking at him. Why wise? Are you okay, Charles? You look like you've got no clue who your aunt is, she said with a grin as Marianne patted his shoulder, only for him to look away and nod. Two don't know who you are. The expression on the person who's supposedly his aunt made his heart wrench, a feeling that he didn't enjoy and was surprised he wouldn't forget. Charles was currently walking into the apartment he and his Aunt Marianne Lawrence have been living in for the last few years after Charles's father left him at his sister's door. That's what she's told me so far. He ran a hand through his hair, still trying to find sense of his situation and attempting that he was now living another life. Someone's life that was the worst part. Instead of being reincarnated into another world like an ice guy, he was reborn in the body of a previous person who had a life and family. An aunt who couldn't help breaking down upon finding out her only nephew no longer has any memories or memories that didn't exist for him. He clicks his tongue, leaves a bad taste in my mouth. Flopping onto the couch, Charles laid a hand over his eyes, attempting to try to gather his thoughts and make sense of the situation. I would have thought that I'd be in hell, at least limbo. While he wasn't the most devout and felt guilty about it, Charles in his previous life was still a believer in God and assumed that he would be swimming at Hellfire Lakes right about now, enjoying a nice, relaxing time in sulfur. Sitting up, he swung his legs off the couch to stand. But I'm not somehow. Yet somehow he wasn't tossed into the piping hot soup bowl. Ugh. Trying to make sense of my situation is just going to drive me mad. If anything, I should be glad to be alive in a body healthier than my old one. But it wasn't yours. That voice, probably being Charles's guilty consciousness, constantly told him. Even then he pushed it down while walking into the kitchen and opening the fridge, only to find it filled with almost nothing but some beer. Was Charles the responsible one? Those words naturally escaped him. The short time he's gotten to know Marianne has enlightened him to the fact she really loves alcohol, and yet really cares for her nephew. Closing it, he groaned, realizing there was no food. Though he did remember getting cash from his aunt as an allowance, which led to the issue at hand. He doesn't know the original Charles's password into his bank, meaning the money couldn't be checked. I can still buy stuff, so there's a plus. Grabbing his coat from the hanger, the young man walked out the door with one thing on his mind: food. So this is shopping. Currently the Ravenet was at a mini-art close by, observing through what was available to purchase and decide what's best. I have never done this. Sadly, the one that was the current Charles had little to no experience shopping, with his head filled with the constant worry he'll buy the wrong thing or have enough money. What if I have no money? Just as he began lamenting going out, Charles went around a corner, falling to the ground a moment after running into something. Oh, I'm sorry? Or rather someone. Wow. Charles's breath was taken away upon seeing an attractive young woman around his age with violet eyes and long, silky black hair that reached down to her hips and was wearing a school uniform which consisted of a dark red jacket with the letter P embroidered in gold topped with a red bow, and a green skirt with a thin white strip around the lower end. He also couldn't help but notice the more physical appearance of her body, not once having seen someone with a bombshell body such as hers. Why does she look familiar? Shaking away the absurdness, he stood up and reached a hand out towards her. Let me help you up. After rubbing the pain from her head, she absent-mindedly reached out her hand to the person. Thank you, kind sir. Yet the strangest thing happened. Upon seeing Charles's face, her features shifted to one of shock as she jumped back with a defensive stance. How are you alive? The roof light flickered but went unnoticed, just as a pink glow came from behind her. Charles spoke. You know me? Eh? The glow disappeared, only the young woman's confused face being Charles's focus. For a moment she hesitated before speaking. You don't remember me? Awkwardly laughing to himself, Charles put on his poor little amnesiac act. Why yeah, I woke up not long ago. Apparently I've lost my memory. Charles did his best to put on a lost expression, not wanting to expose that he was a different person in the body of someone that possibly knows this most beautiful girl. Calm down, dude. Clearing his throat after trying to play off his flush, the girl's mind was currently racing. How? How is he alive? I was sure he died. At this moment Rainier, resident fallen angel, couldn't fathom the mere idea that she failed to kill a human. Though it seems he's lost his memories, so maybe I can recover from this situation. With her signature grin flashing through Rainier's head, in the physical world she held a joyous smile and ran forward, making sure that Charles's arm was between her cleavage. Oh Charles, it's me, Amaya. Your girlfriend. She leaned closer, which caused Charles's arm to be buried further into her chest. This girl is my girlfriend, mentally high-fiving the original Charles within his mind, respecting the other's skills in being able to pull such a beautiful girl as a girlfriend. Though I feel guilty, this was the girlfriend of the original Charles, not him. It would be great to have a relationship with her, but it'd leave a bad taste in my mouth. With gentle movement, the arm stuck between her chest was pulled free and Charles stood in front of the surprised girl, with a soft smile. I'm sorry, but I don't remember you, Amaya. I really don't. While Rainier's face showed a heartbroken expression, deep down she was happy that this human didn't remember how she killed him or failed to do so. I'm so sorry, Charles. Is there anything? Just as she was about to clasp his hand into her own, the young Ravenet pulled back with conflict evident within his eyes. TCH, this frickin' kid. Annoyed with his distant actions, the fallen angel decided to change tactics and attempt to play along with keeping her distance, knowing trying to affection with this boy who barely knew her may not work. At least he is like every other boy, obsessed with Bulbous. Having seen the excitement within his eyes upon finding out they were dating and when feeling his arm between hers, this meant that with some nudging she could draw him closer until I can kill him. Permanently. A longsword waster fell to the ground lifelessly, followed by Charles taking a knee after seemingly exerting himself too far, the sweat on his brow wiped by the back of his hand. I thought I'd get powers or some OP moves, he complained once again. Ever since the system greeted him upon waking up in the body of Charles Lawrence, he's been trying to see what he could do and maybe if he got some op ability. And thus he discovered that he didn't have anything like that, the closest being this sacred gear thing that he doesn't know what it is or what a sacred gear was to begin with. It feels like a familiar term to me though. Sitting here feeling pity about himself won't get him anything. If he doesn't have an ability like in those reincarnation stories he's read, maybe he's missing something? Speaking of familiar. His gaze naturally went to the benches that allowed people to observe the martial matches, and sitting amongst the empty seats was one Amaya with radiant eyes, the gorgeous girl having arrived in the middle of his testing and cheered him on for some reason. She's refused to leave me alone when she gets a chance. Internally, Charles was both proud and jealous of the original being capable of catching such a beautiful, loyal girlfriend such as Amaya, though I still feel bad since I'm not the Charles she dated. He felt like scum. Charlie. The radiant voice of Amaya grabbed his attention, only for it to shift downward with a blush upon seeing how her chest bounced with every step she took towards him, the boy barely concealing his flushed face when Amaya got close enough. Score! Meanwhile, Rainer's fatigue was at its breaking point, exhausted from playing the cute and innocent girlfriend to a human that should be dead. But I must be careful if he's lying. Of course, a normal human can't do anything to a fallen angel like herself, but the amount of times a human has come back from the dead and was in perfect condition was zero for Rainer. She's never and will never fail to kill her targets. Somewhere in Ku, a certain brunette scratched his ear. While her evil monologue was going on within her head, in reality Rainer cocked her head sideways when realizing she didn't hear what Charles said. Could you repeat that? I didn't hear? I said we should break up. Amaya. The eyes of Charles looked hesitant yet resolute, almost displaying the guilt that he felt at this moment. Both external and internal. Rainer could help but make an ugly face and noise, the mere fact that this human dared. Before she could continue her thought, and summon a light spear, Charles explained. It's not because of something you did or anything, but it's me. The way his face looked so guilty and innocent that she almost puked from the boy's child nonsense. Before she kills him here and now for daring to break up with her when she hasn't hatched her plan, she'll be merciful and let this stupid, hormone-driven boy explain. The Charles that you dated and liked isn't here, at least not his memories, he started off straightforwardly. From what he's gathered, Amaya was a very straightforward girl underneath her cute and innocent self, so Charles figured it would be easier to explain in such a manner. You, my aunt, and everyone around me, it's like I'm surrounded by strangers that are weirdly close to me. Does that make sense? I'm not really good at explaining how I feel. Amaya was silent, her eyes covered by her bangs, and with her silence Charles took it as a chance to continue. What I'm saying is that, while we may be strangers, I wouldn't mind getting to know you. Hot. His belly felt hot and sticky, even a burning sensation that slowly crept up and through his body. Relax. A breathless exhale snuck between Charles's lips, almost like a sigh as the very air in his lungs were gone. It was with his deep blue eyes that were focused on Amaya's face that they diverted down to his abdomen. He was stabbed. Stabbed by something like pink light. Such a sight complexed Charles for a moment before his mind finally caught up to him. You stabbed him? I don't know how you didn't die the first time, but I'm done playing house, so I'll be finishing the job. These are my orders. Rainer's eyes were cold, the voice that was so sweet and kind now seemed to have matured in an instant, now filled with a disgust and sadistic hint that she seemed almost horrified to be close to him. Did she always have such black wings on her back? As the light disappeared and left a gaping hole in his stomach, it was finally by then that the adrenaline running through Charles's body gave out, flooding his body with unbearable pain that caused Charles to cry out in agony upon his knees. My name is Rainer, not Amaya, you stupid human. With that she spread out her wings, taking flight and leaving Charles there on the ground, alone. Gasping through what remained of his lungs, blood pooled around him into the floor below, as if painting an image of red as he lay dying. Am I going to die again? After getting a second chance? I'm not surprised. It was too good to be true. He couldn't stop them, the thoughts flowing through his mind as he felt his body growing colder and colder in real time, as the life clinging to this body was ed out by the hands of death. I didn't want. Just as Charles felt his eyes grow weak, just as he was about to let death take him. Die. Item has felt its host's will and awakened. What? For a moment the cold felt as if it was receding. Passive skill lion-hearted will has activated. The gaping hole within Charles's stomach was enveloped in a white light. A faint hum could be heard from it as it got smaller, shockingly revealing more skin in place of where there wasn't any. More and more light envelopes his body, the white light blinding any that would look into it as magical power flooded the area around. Interesting. Who with his remaining consciousness, the young man questioned whose voice it was that he heard before joining Morpheus' embrace. Ben.dt. Interrupt that. In an infinite space of darkness, a young man with dark hair slowly descended as if within water, bubbles rising from his mouth to an unknown surface. C.rat.ions. Yo.ond. UARFK. A noise caught the boy's attention. The eyes that were obscured by the darkness seemingly twitched, almost as if seeing something. Dura Inc. Macing Dormwin Y.Bobek access. Error. And then as if a vacuum appeared, the young man's body was pulled instantly up towards a shining light that sparkled through the dark water, getting closer and closer until the sound of water splashing was heard. Ah! Charles shot up from the bed he was in, even falling to the ground at one point as he coughed, struggling to get air into his lungs almost as he was drowning, panting hard. His white bleached face was dripping in sweat. Frantically trying to wipe it off, like the feeling of being wet made him afraid. What he swallowed hard, coughing once more. What was that? What do you mean? Totally not screaming like a girl, the lamp sitting at Charles's bedside was grabbed and held like a weapon, now being aimed in every direction of his room in search of wherever the voice came from. Who goes there? Reveal yourself. How do you expect me to do that when I don't have a body? The voice appeared again, this time allowing Charles to realize there seemed to an echo, and that it was frighteningly close. Charles swung the lamp around, aiming where he thought he heard the voice only to see nothing. You know you're not going to hit anything, right? It spoke again, resulting in Charles dropping the lamp and ducking down with his head pushed into his arms, the boy trying to hide himself like he wasn't insane. Great, I'm hearing voices. Maybe it's a ghost. Once more the voice spoke, it sounded like it was almost in his head. First, I'm not a ghost sort of. And secondly, I am in your head, kid, your mental world to be exact. My what? Yep, it was official. Charles Lawrence has completely gone off his rocker. Time to toss him into the loony bin. Meanwhile he could have sworn he heard the voice sigh, as if it was too old for this. It'd be better to meet face to face. Huh! What do you? As if a heavy fatigue swallowed him, the ravenet's eyes rolled back into his head as he collapsed to the floor unconscious. Cobalt-like eyes flickered open, a reach cradling the front of his head in an attempt to ease the growing headache, as he sat up. What now? Charles's looked beyond his hand to find himself within a black void with no end or beginning, almost like there was no concept of distance within here. I'm happy to meet the one who's to be my partner. Despite the world not following real-world logic, Charles could feel the heavy and powerful wind currents behind him that almost uprooted the boy like a tree within an eye of a storm. When the void shook upon a heavyweight landing, Charles pulled down his arms to uncover his vision, only for his heart to stop in real time. Standing there before him was a creature that wasn't normal and more like something you'd see in fantasy, with scales as pure as snow on a winter evening and feathers akin to those of a dove, topped with long horns almost like a crown upon its head. The creature had similar melancholic eyes, they too were as blue and wide as the sea that Charles once dreamed about seeing in person in his previous life. Just the sight of the creature flexing its massive dove-like wings and tail made any strength remaining in Charles's legs disappear. A dragon. A dragon. A dragon. It was indeed a dragon, a creature of myth standing and breathing before him. If he wasn't so afraid, Charles would be beyond excited to see a mythical creature he always dreamed of being real. I am Albion, the Vanishing Dragon and White Dragon Emperor. That voice, Charles knew exactly where he heard that voice from. And then memory blipped in Charles's mind, one that made him almost despair at the reality he was in now. I'm in Highschool DxD. I'm in Highschool DxD. I'm in Highschool DxD. He repeatedly said those words, almost chanting fervently like he prayed that they were true. Meanwhile the white dragon cocked his head, maybe looking confused if you were capable of reading a dragon's face. Hello? Can you hear me? Albion leaned closer, reaching the golden wing spur towards the boy, gently nudging him in an attempt to get his attention. You okay? I'm in Highschool DxD. The boy's cry made the dragon falter and almost fall back, having been caught by surprise at his host's suddenly loud voice right after introducing himself. Did he activate the Juggernaut drive without me knowing? It was an absurd question to even ask, but the white dragon couldn't explain the craziness he was witnessing as his host was now standing pacing back and forth with a dark expression. Curiosity got the better of the dragon, using his mental connection to Charles to look into the boy's memories on what this Highschool DxD was and why it had him scared. Just then the white dragon's face somehow turned whiter and more pale, a fierce trembling moving across Albion's body upon seeing everything related to Highschool DxD, but Dragon Emperor. And that's how Charles single-handedly caused one of the 4 Dragon Emperors to question his life. Item has been added to inventory and updated. Congratulations! You've awakened! You are now F rank. Due to rank increase, memories lying dormant within your body have become accessible. Error. Due to current rank, only fragments are available. Viewing them now. Currently Charles was looking through the notifications tab, coming to a realization of what happened and why he was still alive after being stabbed by Rainier again apparently. I got killed by Rainier of all people. Twice. That itself would have soured Charles's mood, but he currently had bigger fish to deal with, or rather dragon. I'm the White Dragon Emperor in this world. Why? And what happened to Vala? Not only was he stuck in one of the most beloved ecchi stories in his world that has many fans and fanfics that even Charles has read, but he was also the White Dragon Emperor instead of Lucifer's descendant Vala Lucifer, and the original White Dragon Emperor of Highschool DxD. What consequences could I have caused to the plot? He didn't want to think about that. It really shouldn't have been his problems. I wondered why she looked familiar. Initially he assumed it may have been his body that found her, which could be true, but it was apparently the fact that he's seen her and her frickin' back in his past life when watching anime was all he could do every day. While he lamented over the fact of where he was, the sounds of crying drew Charles's attention from his midlife crisis to another's midlife crisis. As of this moment the mighty White Dragon Emperor, a force to be reckoned with and feared by all, that it took all 3 of the Abrahamic Pantheon's factions working together to kill him and Drake, only for the dragons to end up sealed in sacred gears. And he was crying hysterically. Why? Why do I become known as the But Dragon Emperor? Am I simply a side character for a pervert's fetish paradise? Oh, how he howled with such despair. It made even Charles feel his situation wasn't the worse when seeing how the White Dragon was acting. That explains why I felt the name was familiar too, though I wouldn't have expected to have divine dividing. This meant he was the Red Dragon Emperor's rival, aka Issei Hayadu, aka the frickin' protagonist of Highschool DxD that went beyond infinity later in the story. How is this fair? I'm getting my kicked by one of my heroes, maybe worse. Dead. Not many people can claim they were killed by one of their favorite anime protagonist MS. Oh, how much he can brag about it to the people. I don't want to die. Again. Maybe his situation was worse than the White Dragon's. That made him feel better, and then even worse in a mere second. It was then he noticed the puffy red eyes of Albion looking at him, even the sound of him sniffling his noise after blowing snot from it for the last hour. It kinda ruined his divine appearance, to be honest. Charles wasn't sure he'd look at Albion the same for a while. Noticing he was still looking at him, he spoke up. Why, Wise, almighty vanishing dragon? Give it up, I could hear what you were thinking. That made Charles pale, fearing he may be killed now by the dragon. I won't kill you. He could still hear his thoughts. Yes, I can. But don't worry, I won't kill you. I'm too depressed to be angry. If a dragon could make a depressed expression, that's how he imagined it to look like. So it looks like we're a predicament, he started off, hoping to get on the dragon's nice side. Indeed, the dragon responded with no life in his voice. Seeing the current condition of the White Dragon, and one of the most integral characters to the plot, this would cause problems for the story, which would mean I would have to participate. And he wanted to avoid doing that at all costs. Only the desire to live his life in peace should be on his mind. Not fighting gods and dragons, though I already am exposed. He has been killed twice by Rainier so far, resulting in the former Charles' death, and then his current death, though it's great fortune that he was alive. No, something saved me. He didn't know what it was since the inventory function was still locked at the moment for some reason, meaning he couldn't check the information yet and would have to wait. Maybe he could forget about it. No, that'd be stupid. Charles Lawrence. Once more Albion's voice caught his ears. Now there was a fierce determination within the White Dragon's gaze that made Charles shiver in fear of what caused the change in attitude. Yes? You're going to become strong. Stronger than that, Red. It was the worst-case scenario. What? What the hell do you mean? Even he couldn't help cursing. His entire plan to enjoy his second life was ruined by Rainier already after killing him, and now this lizard was talking nonsense that didn't make sense. How do you expect me, a normal kid, to get stronger than issei frickin' Hayadu? I'm not Vale, your original host, and who would have been your strongest host in history, because I refuse to be known as the But Dragon. Drag is one thing with that, but I refuse to be humiliated like this. Albion's willpower causes torrents and hurricanes to manifest within Charles's mental space. It was like a disaster had appeared, and at the eye of the storm was the vanishing dragon. Hold on. Calm down, Albion. He could feel it, how Albion's power made Charles's body feel like an overfilled bowl about to break and spill everything out. At this rate he may actually die a third time, and doing something 3 times had a guarantee of being permanent. The area where Charles laid glowed beneath the skin, followed by the thumbing rhythm of a heartbeat. With that beating which produced ripples of white light from Charles's body, said white light filling his mental space with it as it began encroaching upon Albion like an unnatural force. And as if calming the storm's eye, Albion ceased releasing his willpower and directed his large, blue eyes towards the coughing Charles. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have, but the boy simply raised up a hand, waving it off as he finally caught his breath. It's fine. Just don't do that again. He's died once already. It was after recovering his breath that he continued, I'll be forward with you. I don't like fighting, nor am I even interested in it. Sitting down with his legs crisscrossed, the dragon could see the boy's eyes. There was little ambition. I don't want to waste this second chance, Albion. Albion's eyes didn't shake, but one could see he wasn't pleased to hear those words, yet it was his host's will he had to follow, and even if that may lead this boy to his death without the necessary strength. And yet the boy's response did surprise him. But it's clear that my life is in danger. So I'll at least need the bare minimum amount of power to protect myself if I want to live my life. One step, then another, and another. Each step forward brought him closer to the vanishing dragon standing before him, until he stood right in front of Albion, both pairs of azure eyes gazing into one another, as if the difference in species or size didn't matter. And to do that, I'll need your help. In exchange, the right of his hand was raised up, brought in the form of a fist pointed towards the dragon, yet no ill intent was behind as he smiled. I'll give my absolute best against the Red Dragon Emperor if we ever meet, and make this generation of White Dragon Emperor wasn't a waste. In an almost hesitant, unconscious gesture, the dragon too raised up his right wing and brought it towards Charles's extended hand, the wing spur at its tip stretched outward. Will you help me, partner? School bells rang as students left their classrooms, Charles having left room 304 and the crowd spilling from its doorway, wearing earbuds while looking down at his flip phone. The technology here is old. I think Highschool DxD started around April of 2019. Meaning he had 2 years before he met any of the cast, that is if luck wasn't on his side, as Charles wanted to not be involved with the plot. But if Val is gone, the plot may already be ruined. That was the conundrum he faced, since he was the current White Dragon Emperor instead of Lucifer's descendant. Did that mean he was gone, or simply without divine dividing? Charles shook his head. There was no way of knowing without running into Valley if he was still alive, and that would lead to issues down the line, especially getting caught up with the fallen angel faction that he's currently hostile towards. Azazel may be cool in the anime and manga, but I can't ignore the fact he openly ordered for Sacred Gear users to be killed. While he hasn't read the manga and light novels in a while, some of the information that wasn't in the anime stuck with him and reminded Charles that Azazel was Azazel the scapegoat, and one of the most dangerous fallen angels. Indeed. A crow is a crow. Even I wouldn't place my trust in Azazel. Even if he is a bit more peaceful nowadays, he was someone that struck fear almost as much as Samayaza. That caught his attention. Samayaza? Where have I heard that name before? It was a unique name that wouldn't be used often. Hearing this, Albion chimed in again. Samayaza is the leader of the same authority as Azazel from their days as Watchers. Though argued who was above or below the other for centuries, Samayaza is of the same power as Azazel, if not greater, since he knew God's infallible name, and was said to have named each member of the Grigori. This made Charles stop in his tracks, now standing in the middle of the hallway as students walked past him like a rock in a river. So he's a bigger threat than Azazel? In my opinion, yes. He's the one that personally led their rebellion to steal humans and force them as their mates, leading to the birth of the Nephilim, and you know how that story ends. Huffing a chill breath within the mental world, the dragon's eyes narrowed as he thought back to the time he heard of after Genesis, as he felt a chill go down his spine at the bloody history. Noah's Ark. He heard the dragon's confirmation, a sigh escaping Charles's lips before he was brought back to reality. The young man finding himself alone within the hallway like a weirdo or some main character. I need to get home. It wouldn't be until 3 hours later Charles could leave school. While the voices of number kids were conversing with one another, he was in another world almost literally. Hey Albion, I have a question. The sleeping dragon grunted, giving him the go-ahead to ask it. How did I get home yesterday? Especially after being stabbed? After Charles finished making a deal with Albion and waking up in the real world, he once more found himself in his room, only this time he got a chance to look at himself. His shirt was ruined from the blood and burns, so he had to dispose of it by burning it away. Though sad, that wasn't what perturbed him so much, it was actually the absence of said wound and how he was home. As far as I remember, you walked yourself home after healing. For the wound, perhaps it was that system of yours, but beyond that, I'm unaware. Charles couldn't help but hide his disappointment. He didn't blame Albion since the dragon only recently awakened and couldn't do much outside of Charles's body. Since the system was invisible to everyone that wasn't him and now Albion, he pulled it up to look at the notifications prior to yesterday and found the culprit. Lion-hearted Will? In an instant the system responded to Charles's words and switched to his skills section. The mere fact of having this surprised the duo. Name Lion-hearted Will. Type passive. Grants 1 increased vitality and power, also increasing user's resource regeneration as well as natural regeneration. Can resurrect user on every 24 hours. Connected to bound item? Cheat skill extra life. Both of them said out loud, though low enough to not hear the latter. No one of course but Charles can hear Albion unless the former allowed it. Even then the two couldn't help but express their interest. Does this mean I can't die? Though there was the clear weakness of having to wait 24 hours after each use, if Charles was ever in a clutch situation where he was about to die, it would absolutely be this skill that had become handy in later situations. Though unfortunately his inventory was still locked and denied access, so he couldn't check the information on whatever the item was that granted him said skill. Then an idea came to mind: skill menu. Listening to his command, the system back out of the Lion-hearted Will skill and pulled up his available list of skills. Skill list. Lion-hearted Will passive. Passive locked. Tower access active. The results weren't bad but not good either. Honestly, they weren't really good at all. 2 passive skills and 1 active skill, with one of the passive skills locked? Are you serious? He was sure he'd sound like that J.J. Jameson meme that he heard in his world. Though that did make Charles wonder if Marvel existed in this world too, hopefully. Focus, dude. Out of the skills available he could only look at Lion-hearted Will and Tower Access. It was the latter that caught his attention as he made an assumption of what it could be. With its name, does that mean instead of dungeons, I would be scaling a tower? In his opinion that was worse than finding dungeons, as he could explore similar leveled dungeons to improve. But if it was a tower type, that'd mean his growth could be limited to how high he scaled the tower. But the rewards may be better, depending on what the tower is and its purpose. In some of the stories he's read with tower types, the structures themselves were created with either the purpose of developing humans for either of resources or to become strong to rule, simply entertainment for the gods to choose apostles and have them fight one another. The possibilities were endless with this genre. As long as it isn't the world after the end type, I may be good. Yet even that didn't make Charles better. The entire situation is one he didn't want to begin with but figured he would need to do. But with the world being the DxD universe and his growth now tied to a tower design, he didn't like his odds as a normal human. Did you forget that you have the vanishing dragon on your side, kid? It was Albion's rough tone that broke Charles's thoughts. Apparently the dragon was still awake and listening to Charles's dilemma. But whether it was an attempt to comfort him, or irritated about not being factored into his plan, the boy didn't know. Did I keep you awake? Sorry if I did, It's fine, honestly I wouldn't know what to do if it was me. Plus I lack the knowledge you know about systems or whatever they are, so you're doing pretty well in my opinion. Oh, so he was trying to comfort him. That made Charles feel better, and his liking towards Albion increased, just as he was about to thank him. Just focus on becoming strong enough to beat the Red One's host to a pulp and ensure I mean we don't become known as the Bedragon Emperor. So he was cheering him up simply because he needed him to fight Drake's host. Clicking his tongue, Charles mentally blocked out Albion, much to the dragon's confusion as his roars faded into the backgrounds of the boy's mind. Now back to reality. Charles came to a conclusion. I'm lost. A few days later. Meanwhile, nearby in the air was the fallen angel Darwick, currently performing his patrol while looking for any sacred gear possessing humans to report back, though he felt quite a bit bored. Yes, bored. He hasn't had a chance to kill any humans in 3 days, and his blood was itching to spill another's. Similar to Rainier, he found humans as nothing more than rats to step underneath his heel, though he found them fun sometimes to play with. That woman's scream last time was magnificent. Oh, how I wished she lasted longer. The lewd smile across his face would disturb anyone that saw it, his hips almost twitching in the form of thrusting in the air as a blush ran across his cheeks. He was scum, as were most fallen angels. Fortunately, or unfortunately for him, Darwick hasn't been able to get his thing on due to his superiors ordering their vigilance in the human world. Damned Azazel, he was like many fallen who looked up to Azazel back in the days when he fell. But as the centuries passed, and he became more peace-seeking, a lot of fallen began cursing their leader. If only Samaiza. Just as he began to speak, the fallen angel couldn't help but stop in his flight path upon feeling its power. It was still weak, but it was also dormant, and felt pressuring beneath itself. Did the boss return? No, their group leader never suppressed his power, as he enjoyed reminding others that he was a high-ranking officer, so it couldn't be him. Then perhaps, did a human awaken their sacred gear? In most cases, that wasn't good, as they were ordered to take care of them immediately if that ever happened, but for Darwick that was good news. Finally, someone to help me get rid of this pent-up feeling. And locking onto its location, the fallen angel Darwick used magic to boost himself in their direction, the wide-stretched smile threatening to rip through his cheeks. In the meantime, Charles was deep inside the redwoods near the town he lived in, the boy showing a pleasant smile as he reminisced on life before this one. I'm glad there's redwoods here. While he wouldn't go deep into his past, Charles will admit that in his previous world he used to visit redwood forests a lot back then before. No use dwelling in the past. Though he was the same age as he died, the young man felt more alive and full of energy as he looked in front of him, the urge to run beckoning him to enjoy himself. Just once, and as if letting the wind take him, the young man shot off as fast as possible through the woods, making sure to place his steps carefully as the wind rushed past him. So he ran and ran and ran, the ravenet moving through the woods and shrubbery like a bat out of hell to some, but to him, Charles felt free. Once he reached a clearing, the young man coughed and almost hunched over, probably pushing himself too far by running that much. Yet he didn't look to regret, letting a laugh spill from himself as he sat back looking up at the clouds before resting on the grass, peace seemingly exerting itself across his features. I haven't done that in years. In Charles's soul the dragon's face was unreadable due to being a dragon, but if one were to say what he looked like, Albion's face was pleased. Get some rest, kid. It'd be best to train with your stamina back. We need to make sure you're ready to enter the tower soon. While he didn't want to spoil the mood, Albion couldn't help but remind why they're here in the woods this far from town. To get stronger. Charles sat up, sighing. I know. But you'd be surprised how long I've been wanting to do that, Albion. After resting for a bit, the ravenet now stood up on his feet in the center opening while listening to the dragon. To start off, we need to awaken your mana core. Charles raised a brow. Mana core? Like where my magical power is stored? Yes. Every living thing has a mana core one way or another, though most species are able to use it naturally without having to awaken it, with the exception of 2 species. Humans and natural animals? He guessed immediately, the reasoning making sense. The dragon hummed in confirmation as if in surprise. That's correct. How did you know that? The boy raised up his nose in pride. You'd be surprised by how much I know about magic and stuff through the power of being a nerd, a proud one at that. Like any boy his age, he's watched anime and read a fair bit of manga, But for Charles, he went further and studied mythology as much as he could due to the fascination he had for it. I thought you were religious? It was surprising that someone that followed the ways of God would study mythology, and everything pagan. I'll admit it was before my conversion, but I couldn't help but hope that they may be real too even afterwards. Charles was a nerd through and through. While he may have found faith in Christ some time ago, he didn't stop his passion for studying, though it did offer perspective. Even if they weren't real, I still believed that there was power in my world in some way or another. But now he was in a world where they were real and the chances of meeting an angel were definite now. Maybe I can get an angel girlfriend, of course, since this was DxD. There was a chance he could find someone like that, and that made Charles chuckle to himself. He may be similar to Issei in some regard, the dragon couldn't help but depressingly note, shivering as the possibility of becoming known as the Bedragon or something worse still had a chance of happening with this host. Did you say something? While he was daydreaming of having an angel girlfriend, the words spoken by Albion drew his attention. Nothing. Back to the lesson. Sitting cross-fit for meditating, Albion continued explaining to Charles about awakening his mana core. Relax your mind and body, look deep into yourself to find the source of power, and imagine bringing it. I did it. Huh! He wasn't lying. Appearing from the boy's hand was an orb of magical power that seemed to drip upwards and dissipate like flames, with the color being a shining silver like reflected sunlight gazing upon it. Are you a genius or something? The question was absurd since he's seen Charles's past memories, but he still couldn't help but ask it for his sake. Nope. I just used my knowledge from what I read and applied it here. The methods are very similar to how one does in manga. Though he wouldn't dare admit out loud that he once tried doing this in his world before numerous times, probably going through a phase where he thought he had a power deep within himself. Just the memories made him blush. But besides that, now what? He asked, holding up the pulsating orb of magical power, but the dragon didn't respond immediately. Even if he did that, it's still hard for a human to pull it off that fast. He's met numerous humans that could be called geniuses. Whether they were his host or met by his host, the white dragon has never met someone that can handle magical power this easily. Not even that damned wizard could achieve that. Albion's view of Charles has changed. It now looked at him with excitement, and hope that this boy may become his strongest host yet, may be able to stand close to the level that Vala Lucifer could have had. Feeling good about this boy, the dragon continued to teach the boy how to use magical power with help from his previous world knowledge and hidden talent for manipulating mana. Wait, I have an affinity for magic? The boy practically screamed out, the orb in his hand disappearing as he looked back at the wings on his back. Yes. I feel that your adaptability to use mana faster than most may hint at your affinity for magic, though this body of yours is unfortunately restrained on what your affinity may be. Now he was confused. Dreams of becoming the Wizard King disappeared like a lie from his mind, almost looking at Albion like he'd stepped in dog poop. Don't look at me like that, blame this body of yours. Everyone has limits to the amount of elements and magics they can use. Be happy that your affinity to utilizing mana puts you above most. He growled out, finding the boy's idea of becoming a king of magicians ridiculous when he was the White Dragon Emperor, one of the strongest beings in the world. So what magic can I use? Hearing the damn lizard White Dragon sigh, he listened to what Albion listed out. You have the chance to learn lightning, fire, wind, gravity and light magic. Is that good? He didn't want to celebrate early, despite learning that he could learn 5 different magics. Honestly, yes. Though it means the chance of learning special kinds of magic that are useful like teleportation magic or dimensional space magic are thin. Charles could feel the dragon's disappointment at the conclusion, though he didn't feel particularly bad about it, though he was confused about one thing. Why do I have an affinity for light magic? I thought that would have been rare. It is, so is gravity. While mages can use the basic forms of each attribute without any affinity for it, the chances of learning higher level spells is difficult. For light it's mainly used for basic spells like creating, light in dark places and is hardly used except by Charles finished the sentence for him, angels. The dragon nodded, even noting that their use of light is akin to being on another dimension when used by higher-ranking angels, remembering the day he and the other dragon emperors were killed by the three factions as the archangel stood high in the sky with spears of light falling from above like stars in the form of judgment. That answers that, but I am curious why I have lightning too. He brought up his hand again, imagining the mana within his core being manifested into the form of lightning, appearing in his hand almost like a spear. I feel like the Nameless King. I don't know who this Nameless King is, but the explanation may be due to my influence. The dragon explained, reminding Charles how he almost couldn't endure the storm that was Albion's fury within his mental world yesterday. I thought it'd be poison. In that moment Charles could feel Albion's confusion. What's with that reaction? My element affinities are lightning, wind and ice, not just poison. Despite explaining it as if it was obvious, Charles couldn't help but he surprised one now. So even Albion is different? From what he could remember, Albion's most powerful ability was his poison, promptly named Reduce, and it was fitting since it basically reduced even gods to nothing, and yet this Albion possessed elements closer to his heavenly appearance. It's not a bad thing, but that means other things could be different too. Another headache to deal with. Just as Charles was going to ask Albion about it, a massive explosion a few feet behind him followed by a thick dust cloud through him and blanketed Charles in dirt. What the was that? Groaning in pain, dirt fell from his clothes as the Ravenet rose to his feet, trying to clean the debris from his eyes. We need to leave. Now. And this is when the character should stand still questioning why and such, letting them lose their time to escape and blah blah blah. Only for Charles to nod, immediately booking it in the opposite direction as he relied on Albion to help guide him through the forest, still trying to regain his vision. I'm not stupid like that. He clicked his tongue every time a character did that, and would end up fighting because of it. But Charles was a coward by nature and didn't want to die fighting without being prepared. I'm guessing it's a fallen angel, and he was correct when Albion confirmed, dodging a tree-branch when the latter told him to duck. He's a bit more powerful than Rainier, but nothing more than a crow. He's a crow to you, but to me he's rotten with black feathers. Using his mana to conjure water, he was finally able to wash out his irritated eyes before coming to a stop behind a redwood tree. Can you track him? I can, though he can probably do the same for you. He must have been close enough to feel you unlocking your mana core. But I thought we were far away enough to do it? Charles spoke mentally, not wishing to expose his position with his loud voice. It's my fault. I underestimated how much mana you possessed, and thought we'd be far enough. It was rare for a dragon to admit its faults, but at this moment Albion has put his host at danger. It's fine, you couldn't have known. But for the boy, he didn't care. There happened to be thoughts of this possibly being a chance and happening, so he came prepared. Pulling out the sword that he had at his waist, it was obviously low quality in comparison to those of the supernatural world. But it's the best that I could afford. Though he didn't feel confident even after learning how to manifest mana, that's because of his restriction as a human, which made it so Charles needed to calculate and use formulas to cast magic unlike devils. Charles felt a burning sensation across his cheek as the tree in front of him exploded into splinters, already moving to duck down as the tree he was previously leaning against was cut where his neck would have been. He's quicker than expected, clicked his tongue, reaching for the sword only to feel nothing. Eyes drawn to his waist, the sword was gone and on the ground before what remained of the tree. Through the dust clouds the purple haze could be seen. Crap. Crap. Charles's eyes were focused on the dust cloud in front of him, particularly the purple glow that could be seen through the obstruction. Darting his gaze to the sword on the ground and back to the figure. Between him and the sword it was the fallen angel who was closer to it. If he wanted to grab it he may lose his head. Waste of money. Briefly lamenting spending whatever he had on the sword from a pawnshop, twisting around in the opposite direction, the young man booked it immediately in an attempt to not waste any more time. Dodge to the right. Heeding the dragon's words, Charles put his entire weight into jumping away with the split seconds he had, narrowly avoiding the light spear grazing his abdomen. While the tree hit by the spear exploded, screams escaped the Ravenet as he clutched his side, soon gritting his teeth as he stood back up. This is nothing. Taking advantage of the smoke spilling into the forest from the blown-up trees, the fallen angel lost sight of the injured child, a growl rippling through him. Rat. Spreading out his wings, Darwick launched upwards, now high in the sky that his wings casted large shadows. It was with a cheek-tearing smile that could be seen. There was no sign of the angel he once was, only a defining corruption. With a wave of his hand and increasing his twisted holy power, almost 100 spears of iridescent purple light were manifested in the sky around him, every single spear aimed at the land below. Despair! Spears of light rained down upon the forest, instigating fires from the burning constructs and starting fires, said flames quickly beginning to consume everything. Meanwhile, deep within said woods was Charles, running with everything he's got, being chased by the fallen angel Darwick not far behind with him tossing more light spears. Keep running, human! You're just making it fun! Charles didn't respond. He couldn't afford to as he ducked under another spear thrown at him, resulting in him falling to the ground with a slide across the forest floor. This dude's persistent smoke filled his surroundings and began filtering into his lungs, the boy immediately grabbing his shirt and tearing it. Now with a mask to at least delay the fumes, he took a place against the small ledge that he fell into, waiting for Darwick to get closer. I need to kill him. There's just one issue. He's never killed someone. Ever. Even if the fallen angel isn't human, that still was killing someone, and Charles didn't want to kill someone. It's something he shouldn't have to get used to. If you don't wish to kill someone yet, it's best to run then. I can't. He's locked into my mana signature judging from the way he's been able to find me, meaning we could run as far as we could and he'd find us, especially since he's got the flight advantage. First Rainier, now this guy? It seems Charles was unlucky with the fallen angels in his town if he's been killed twice and maybe for a third time, though he had insurance now. Lionheart. The problem is that he would have to experience that pain again, to go through death again just to live. Is this how he wanted to live his second life? I'm not a dead horse to beat. Pulling up the system menu and moving to skills, he hovered a finger over the tower access skill. Are you sure? You may die, especially since you've only learned how to manifest mana so far and hardly have any fighting experience. It was true any normal person would die if they ventured into the tower, unlike anime protagonists that seem to adapt easily. But with nowhere to run and not wanting to continue facing death each time he encountered someone he couldn't fight, this was the only option. Permission to enter, Charles simply said, his eyes resolute as he felt the presence of the fallen angel getting closer. Permission to enter requested. Tower of Babel has granted player permission. Transporting now. Darwick appeared not too far behind, slashing through everything in his way down with a sword of light in hand, the cold violet light reflecting in the fallen angel's eyes. With it, madness was on display. There you are! Upon seeing the young man on the ground, ignoring the static blue light surrounding him, Darwick launched forward using his wings to propel himself. The sword of light raised high, shining brilliantly despite its twisted appearance, came down in a large arc aimed for Charles's heart. Only except blood and gore, it cut through nothing except light dust. The human boy had disappeared, right before his very eyes. You remnants of Darwick's curse were briefly heard before being cut off, Charles's consciousness taken into darkness once more. Blue eyes flicker open, everything being blurry for a brief moment as it slowly subsided, regaining their sight and taking in everything. Welcome to Tower of Babel's first floor. Functions initially locked have been released. Unlocked inventory. Unlocked shop. Unlocked. Numerous notifications popped up in Charles's vision, but he simply moved them aside as he took in everything. As far as he could see were trees and shrubbery, now apparently stuck in another forest though smaller in scale to the redwoods. First floor? For being a floor it held an entire forest, though it was another thing that drew Charles's attention from everything else. Tower of Babel? As in the one Nimrod created in defiance to the heavens? It seems so. I briefly remember seeing it, and this tower has that same energy to it, but it seems different. The white dragon was confused why the Tower of Babel still existed after God destroyed it centuries ago, allowing someone like Charles to enter it despite it not being around anymore. Perhaps it's a recreation? You know, using its design since it was quite infamous in myth. Especially since it said afterwards that's how humanity became separated by language. Before they could continue their conversation, however, rustling in the leaves caught Charles's attention that drew his eyes in its direction, only to feel a tingling up his neck that caused him to instinctively pull his head back. For a brief moment he saw it. Something had flown by his face, and into the tree in its direction. It was an arrow. Archer! A cackling was followed by creatures jumping out of the bushes. They were goblins that had surrounded Charles in the time he was looking at the system. Ones wielding makeshift and even rusted weapons ran at him. In the meantime Charles reached for his waist for a weapon, only to remember how he lost the sword. A curse slipped from Charles, but that was the least of his problems, as he was quickly approached on all sides by goblins. The one closest to Charles, holding a rusty knife, jumped up, gliding through the air towards the boy with the knife held up high and an ugly expression. He just barely moved out of the way, letting the goblin fly past him and roll to the ground, only for it to recover and continue coming at him. Charles attempted to take a step back, but an arrow lodged itself into his shoulder, followed up by the knife-wielding goblin to take advantage and stab the human boy in the gut. Damn it! Kicking away the goblin, Charles reached up behind him and snapped the arrow shaft, leaving the arrow inside. I'll do more damage if I pull it out, but now he had to take care of his bleeding belly, ripping what remained of his sleeve and wrapping it around the knife to stabilize it. Passive skill bleeding resistance LVL1 has been acquired. Passive skill stabbing resistance LVL1 has been acquired. After taking care of that while ignoring the system notifications, another arrow was inches from Charles's face, only for him to instinctively dodge with the arrow grazing his forehead and into the background. Passive skill instinct LVL1 has been acquired. Blood flowed from the cut, pooling into Charles' left eye that caused half of his vision to become red. Labored breaths blown heavily from Charles' lips. Am I going to die? The knife-wielding goblin from earlier was back on its feet, rushing at Charles again with another knife in hand, while one with spear and another with a rusty short sword followed behind, their movements becoming slow to Charles as his mind raced. First his past life, then Rainier, and recently that fallen angel guy, now goblins. He was getting tired of asking that question over and over again. No magical power crackled at the tip of Charles's fingers. Just as the goblin was about to stab him, he moved aside and struck the green thing into the ground with a mana-charged punch. I'm not dying today, heirs. A pained groan escaped him when another goblin stabbed him in the back, only to get backhanded by the ravenet and into another goblin. When a spear was thrusted at his face, Charles moved and grabbed the spear's shaft, pulling the goblin close enough to strike in exchange for losing part of his cheek. Yet that didn't deter the young man as a roar erupted. In the process of losing his baser human personality, Charles became more like a beast that kept rushing at the goblins no matter what injuries he racked up. Active skill Berserk LVL1 has been acquired. Die. Me? As if. After learning the new skill, he only seemed to fall more and more into savagery as he used the spear to impale two goblins at once before swinging it around, knocking many more back. Grabbing another by its face, he lifted it up before slamming it down into the ground, crushing the back of its skull and killing it instantly. With green blood mixing with his red, the young man straightened himself up onto his feet as his gaze swept over the remaining goblins. When the goblin archers loosed their arrows towards him, they didn't meet their mark as Charles dodged the first one with his instinct skill and grabbed the second one, spinning around with the momentum to throw it back. The arrow finds its way into a goblin's head, falling back dead without even noticing it. Busy looking at their fallen comrade, none of the ones in the front noticed Charles now standing before them until his shadow was cast over the creature, the first one to respond immediately being impaled by the spear. When one wielding a stone axe dug its stone edge into Charles's side, he hardly flinched and brought up the spear that had the earlier goblin still along its shaft, and brought it down upon the axe-wielding goblin's face straight through into the ground. As madness continued to take Charles's mind, it was the sound of someone's voice that briefly stopped his track. Kid! Get a hold of yourself! A desperate roar could be heard, penetrating through the madness and temporarily bringing it to a lull, the boy's eyes returning somewhat. Albion? Passive skill Composure LVL1 has been acquired. Finally noticing the situation and the state he was in as blood flowed copiously, Cobalt Eyes looked over the notifications with confusion. Are they similar to Han's skills or is this a coincidence? But he couldn't focus on that as he looked at the remaining goblins. Those that fled in fear were gone, leaving only 5 or so. Meanwhile Charles wasn't in the best of states. Albion. How long can I last? Not another 5 minutes. The damage you've sustained is severe and your body is at its limits. Deep down he could feel it. Instinctively Charles could feel how his body screamed for rest and to give out. But this is nothing. The pain he felt before dying, the pain of being stabbed by light, this wasn't enough to make him flinch right now. Passive skill Pain Resistance LVL Point 1 has been acquired. Pain resistance has leveled by 2. Now that couldn't help but shock him, immediately getting another skill only for it to level up twice. Now we're talking. The pain slightly subsided, letting his body feel a bit lighter even if it was still in a lot of pain, but it was enough to allow Charles to down and pick up the rusty sword at his feet. Let's do this. Sprouting from Charles's back was the Divine Dividing. Their blue-colored energy feathers stretched out and were truly a divine appearance. But coupled with his bloody appearance, especially the bloodshot eyes filled with faint traces of earlier madness, so he instead resembled more of a tarnished angel fallen from heaven. Passive skill has awakened. Another goblin's head fell to the ground before becoming gray ash, the perpetrator being a bloody Charles Lawrence holding what remained of a broken, rusted sword used to kill the goblins. And the number of goblins numbering over 20 judging from the many gray ash piles, with some likely dropping loot. Dropping the broken blade, that wasn't fun. With the wings of Divine Dividing on his back, Charles groaned when he stretched his shoulders, dismissing the wings in the process. You almost died if it weren't for the skills you acquired and leveled up. The familiar dragon's voice attempted to scold him, but even Albion couldn't help but express his respect of seeing someone like Charles fight that many monsters after only awakening a week and a half ago. I didn't expect to acquire this many skills either. His gaze was focused on the system menu in front of him. Skill list menu. Passives. Pain resistance LVL 4. Bleeding resistance LVL 3. Stabbing resistance LVL 2. Slashing resistance LVL 2. Instinct LVL 1. Composure LVL 1. Actives. Berserk LVL 1. Praying Strike class type. The one that caught his eye was the class skill he awakened earlier. There are classes too? And I don't get to choose my own? That would have ed if it wasn't for the benefits said skill gave him. Name Praying Strike. Type passive. A skill born from the desire to hunt monsters. It accumulates power the more monsters are killed with the skill. Isn't that kinda broken? Maybe he was finally getting the good luck that an anime protagonist would have. Getting a strong skill such as Praying Strike had to be. Only, there didn't seem to be a difference earlier though. In that fight he awakened it when there were 7 goblins left and by the 7th one, there wasn't much of a difference. Maybe the damage volume didn't increase very much, and he would have to kill a lot more to show its true value, meaning Charles would probably have to kill hundreds of monsters just to possibly increase the skill's attack power modifier. But that was the least of his issues. It was the pain and wounds that were his current concern as they had racked up quite high. It was a miracle that he wasn't dead already. Looks like he was going to use the revival trait of Lionheart after all. Wait. Pulling up the menu he looked at his base screen looking for something, finding it at the bottom left corner. Status window. Name Charles Lawrence. Race human? Status none. Rank low class? Sacred gear Divine Dividing. Parameters. Strength E Endurance E. Agility E Mana E. Luck E. Currency 43 GP. Money! Mentally ordering the system to show him the shop menu, it appeared as he hoped and sorted it to show only the cheapest potions. Shop menu. Health potion lowest quality. 10 GP. Instantly Charles bought it. A bottle of clear red liquid inside a fancy albeit small bottle appeared. Weakly he brought it to his lips to drink it. Health potion lowest quality has been used. Some of your wounds are being alleviated. Good news so far. Before he could finish his words, red notifications popped up. Injuries are too extensive. Body is on the verge of death. Figured as much. He highly doubted an intermediate potion would do anything with the state of his body was in. Once more feeling that creeping cold feeling again. He was certainly getting tired of feeling cold. Lionheart's skill has detected healing effects. The heart of the lion is a symbol of. All types of healing have been increased. What? And as if a lie, most of Charles's injuries were healed with some of the more major ones slightly elevated. But his body was no longer on the brink of death for now. What a cheat skill! Even the dragon couldn't help but express his jealousy of such a power. If someone like Charles was healed by a Twilight healing user, he'd be basically immortal. We can surely defeat Drake with this cockroach-like power. Have you lost your sense of shame? Despite the question offending the dragon and getting angry roars, the young man felt good as he laid in the grass. There may be hope after all. Deep down he knew the chances of having a normal life were almost null, but it was a desire he wanted too much of after his first life, and if he wanted to achieve that, I need to get strong to not be bothered. Sitting up from the grass, Charles used badges he bought from the shop with his remaining gold and patched himself up as best as possible, getting onto his feet somewhat weakly. Let's get strong enough to be lazy cockroaches, Albion. With a hearty laugh, Charles picked up the bow and arrows as well, another sword, with this one being a long sword. Meanwhile the white dragon had mixed emotions. This childish. A goblin's head fell to the ground at its own feet, the rest of its body following a second after, green blood spilling out thickly from the stump of its neck. While it turned to ash like the rest, it was the person responsible that drew one's attention. Charles stood in the meadow with a sword and shield in hand, wiping off blood with the thenar of his palm, mindless to keep his bloody fingers away from his own face. Looks like we've killed the last in this area, even the experience isn't worth it anymore. Spoke the vanishing dragon, currently resting within the mental world as Charles began to use the divine dividing less and less frequently as the battles got easier. It's only the first floor. I imagine it'll be harder as we ascend each floor, dismissing the equipment back into his inventory, initially unlocking the feature upon entering the tower and becoming a much more useful function he rallied on. With a screen display showing his current status, it was the currency he looked forward to. 148 GP. Not bad, though I can't buy anything nice yet. Once he confirmed his current status and wealth, the young man stretched his neck out while cradling it in hand, a resulting pop getting his satisfaction. There we go. That's the spot. We should return, kid. Your Marianne will be worried. Albion stopped himself from calling the older woman Charles's aunt, knowing how the latter felt around her when walking around in the body of her nephew as a completely different person. Sighs, you're right, I should head back. Though the dragon could hear the hesitancy in his tone, probably uncomfortable returning back to the place he's currently calling home. I should find my own place. While he dwelled on the thought, eventually he was back in the real world and was greeted by a grim reality. Everything around him had been reduced to ashes. Did that crazy guy burn everything down because of me? There was a faint guilt in his gut. The once enchanting redwoods that he enjoyed briefly were now ruined. Tunnels of light tore through the darkness, followed by the sounds of people talking, most likely investigating the scene. We need to leave. In response he nodded, summoning divine dividing to take into the sky. No argument from me. Ascending from the burning remains of said woods, Charles overhead took in the landscape as the moon reflected off the glowing blue wings. Someone needs an kicking. Getting in a green growl from Albion, both human and dragon fled the scene in a burst of sparkling blue hue. Eventually they arrived back at the apartment, landing in an alleyway and opting to take the stairs rather than the porch, taking each step carefully up them. Who would expose themselves like that? Once at the door, keys were pulled from Charles's pocket and aimed at the door lock, only for the door to swing open. And standing there was Marian Lawrence, the aunt of the original owner of Charles's current body and his guardian. Hi. The woman didn't bother responding as she grabbed him by his ear, pulling the young man into the apartment after slamming the door closed. Dumbass. After throwing Charles onto the couch and taking a seat across from him, Marianne sat there cross-legged, patiently tapping her fingers with crossed arms. Meanwhile the young man was currently trying to figure out what was going on. What did he do to her off? You're Charles, remember? Her nephew. Lately you've probably been acting differently from her nephew and just came home late after a massive forest fire occurred. She's likely both worried and distressed. Albion didn't have much knowledge when it came to family and children since most dragons developed on their own, but he's lived the lives of many hosts and seen different facets of humans than when he had a body. Meanwhile Charles remained quiet after taking Albion's words to heart, realizing that the current state of their relationship was also affecting Marianne and not just himself, all the more making him feel horrible. Why couldn't I just be reincarnated like every other iSky character? But it couldn't change the past and would have to live with it. He was now Charles Lawrence, and his every action still has effects on people's lives. I'm sorry, he blurted out, seemingly snapping Marianne's expression from one of sternness into one of surprise. She let out an uneasy sigh. I never imagined you'd apologize first, Charlie. That invited a brow to rise, but he let her continue. Ever since the hospital and losing your memories, you've been acting like a different person. Her shoulders started to tremble. I tried to reason myself that it's a phase. He'll get better, just be patient. But then you started to distance yourself from me since then. A choked sob finally gave way. Just seeing her like this reinforced that she was deeply affected by their current relationship, that it was hurting her. I know you don't have your memories anymore, that you are going to act differently. But this, she gestures to the door and then the window which shows the night sky. Not coming home on time, staying out late at night. Getting up from her seat, Marian walked over to Charles and knelt down, taking one of his hands into between her own. Don't shut me out, Charles. You're my only family. What's going on? Please tell me. Droplets of tears fell hopelessly to the carpet floor, staining them with a dark color as Marian's gaze was downward, afraid to look her nephew in the eyes. And for Charles himself, despite barely knowing her, the sight made his body tremble too, almost instinctively urging him to pull her into an embrace. But Charles's mind wasn't comfortable with it. He was hardly comfortable around people in his past life, and that continued into this life too. However, he was still human. He had somewhat of a moral compass, so he couldn't just push her away and hurt her away. It's not your fault. But mine. Cobalt eyes similar to his own snapped upward, finding themselves gazing into his melancholic ones, ever since waking up. I feel like I don't belong here, that Charles Lawrence is someone else, and I'm simply wearing his name. Squeezing her hands gently in his own palms, he let out an uneasy breath. Marianne. I'm not the Charles you knew, and I'm not sure I will be. I feel like a stranger posing as your nephew, and being around you suffocates me in guilt, as if I'm toying with your emotions. Swallowing his fear, you've been kind, Marianne. But don't want to take advantage of that kindness, not until I've regained my memories. Hearing those words made it harder for the woman to hold everything in, immediately pulling Charles into her arms and holding tight as tears flowed freely. However, I would love to get to know you, Marianne. And maybe then we can fix our relationship and become aunt and nephew once more. Charles felt filthy saying those words, not wanting to promise something that may never come true, but he couldn't leave like this, so just for a while, he will try to be a family with her. Because he remembered something important, how each time he goes up in rank, that he will learn the original Charles's memories, and maybe he could give her back the family she's unknowingly lost. Maybe. Kid. I'd like that, Charlie. She spoke into his shoulder, further realizing how tall he was compared to this woman. But he didn't push her away nor welcomed it, instead simply let her have that moment. Meanwhile, outside the porch window, standing on a roof watching the scene, was someone with wings dark like tar, pale skin stretching across their face. There you are. Darwick never loses his prey. I hate school were the thoughts of Charles, currently sitting in class listening to a teacher lecture about American history, and even some of its bloody past, such as its slavery age. Though it's not entirely bad, I don't know why I was so excited to be back in class when I reincarnated. School was the same as usual, though it can be fun at times and impactful on one's future. It hardly stood a chance against the thrill of the supernatural, and someone who's experienced one life confined to a single room for a long time. Nonsense. History can be interesting, like for right now what your teacher is speaking about. I once had a host that helped free slaves during that time. Now that got a reaction that made the dragon smirk, having caught Charles's attention with the bait he's placed. Really? The boy asked, faintly interested in the history that wasn't much divulged in DxD since Vala wasn't the protagonist, meaning Charles could learn information exclusive to himself. If one could see Albion, they would notice how high he held his snout up. Of course. My host was a boy named Jax around that time, born a slave and broke free when he was from an installation owned by a devil. A devil? That didn't help market them as nice when they followed how myth portrays them. What do you mean nice? Devils and demons have always been creatures of evil. It's only due to a few individuals that the perspective of devils has changed. That, and for some reason, that brought up unpleasant memories for the vanishing dragon, still regretting looking into Charles's memories. You mean that even Surzex could be evil? If so, that wouldn't be good. Yes and no. Sirzex is an interesting being that has changed devil culture, being one about peace and stopping the descendants from taking over after the previous devil kings disappeared. What? Disappeared? Charles hoped he misheard him, but the dragon huffed in confirmation. Indeed, the dragon continued. They are believed to be dead. However, I was present when they fell. And what occurred then was strange. Their power did not dissipate as one would expect when devils die. It simply disappeared. Charles felt a chill crawl up his spine. I do not believe they are dead, Albion went on. But understand this, there is no proof. Only observation and intuition. In the end, it is conjecture. I'll actually die if I meet them. If he had to be honest, he would have rather fought the ones from DxD rather than ones that are like their mythology counterparts. At least Odin would be tamed by naked women. Could you tell me more about my predecessors? At his words, he felt like he could almost feel Albion's smile at his request. Charles's thoughts were interrupted by the impeccable timing of the school bell. Chairs scraped and backpacks zipped as the last bell rang. All right, don't forget to read chapters 4 and 5, she said, her voice smooth and unhurried. You're free to go. Slinging his backpack on to follow the other students out of the class, mentally preparing for his next class. Unfortunately, the system decided to bother him again, another screen appearing in front of him as he walked through the hallways of his school, a sigh showing his annoyance. This again? Due to entering the Tower of Babel and unlocking the system's main features, the other remaining sealed features such as quests are available now as well. Quests? What? Both human and dragon were confused, rereading the system message a few times before the screen changed again. Daily quest strength training has arrived. Goal: push-ups 0-100, sit-ups 0-100, squats 0-100, running 0-10 km. Warning: failure to complete daily quest will result in an appropriate penalty. 115,935. Isn't this straight from solo leveling? Am I being pranked? As someone that's read and watched both its manhwa and anime adaptation, this quest screen was something a fan like him was familiar with. Wait. Don't tell me I'm in a world that's a crossover with DxD and solo leveling. However, he doubted it for now. If it was, there'd be gates and dungeons rather than a tower to climb, especially with the supernatural still being a secret. But the possibility of it happening may not be zero great. Now he would have to deal with monsters invading Earth down the line if it ever happened. Honestly, he prayed that it wouldn't happen and that he has enough on his plate as is. Looking back at the quest contents and particularly the part saying penalty, he mentally signed at the extra work he'd have to do. I guess the system wants me to get stronger one way or another. So much for living a normal life. The chances of that happening became zero when you inherited the divine dividing and got killed by fallen angels. Twice that's happened now if I remember correctly. Albion chimed in, not caring much about Charles's dreams and was much more in favor of the quest, now guaranteed to at least push his host to become the best white dragon emperor, and not that horrible name he refuses to say again. Charles could almost feel the dragon's joy, clicking his tongue and cursing the white lizard in his head, resolving to do the quest after school. I wonder if the penalty zone is the same. This was another thing he prayed to God wasn't true. Shivers running down his spine as he entered his next class. Just thinking about giant centipedes terrified him more than fallen angels or goblins. Residing in an abandoned church was a group of fallen angels, those led by Rainier, which included the likes of stray human priests too. This cursed out the one and only freed Selzen, tossing up and catching the handle of his light sword, unbothered by the possibility of hurting himself. A torn book was tossed at his head, knocking him off the spot he sat on. Will you shut the hell up? Rainier yelled, irritated with the stray priest's constant whining ever since he joined them, almost as bad as Darwick's when he gets into a bad mood. ING. Growling in anger as he clutched his head, the stray priest turned away to leave to maybe kill somebody or something. Finally, after Freed was gone, she could get her peace and quiet. Suddenly the roof caved in, dust filling the old ruins before it was swept away, revealing Darwick being the source of the crash. Damn it, Darwick! You know how hard it was to find a place with a roof. Even though Darwick was a bit more powerful than her, It was Rainier who was put in charge, and that was enough to make her arrogant of her authority. Even Darwick didn't disobey most of the time. In response to her words, his wings flexed and blew Rainier back, only catching herself with her own wings before landing. You motherer, what do you think you're doing? Silence, whore! Maybe you should tell me why your target is still alive. Despite the madness Darwick displays, the fallen angel wasn't stupid and knew that the boy he encountered yesterday was the same one Rainier supposedly took care of. Once more Rainier showed an ugly, shocked expression, her mind racing in thought. He's still alive. But I killed him, again. Maybe he had a sacred gear that could bring him back, meaning that he was more dangerous than initially essayed. If he's not dead soon, Azazel will surely demote me. And the next one to take the position would obviously be Darwick, and she couldn't let such a boss her around when he's obviously below her. Freed! The priest entered back into the room, currently wiping his face already stained in blood, presumably from the flayed rat in his other hand while the other held a knife dripping with blood. What do you want? Finally, have something fun for me? Giving a nod, Rainier manifested the document detailing of Charles's information, the boy's face on display. Kill him. Make sure he doesn't see tomorrow's dawn, and I'll reward you. The rat's body dropped from his hand like it was bothering, a twisted grin breaking across his features. Oh. Then will you let me have with that sinful bod of yours in exchange? Even though she despised the notion of sleeping with a human, if she wanted to maintain her position and ensure Darwick doesn't one-up her, sacrifices needed to be made. I'll think about it. Perhaps the more gruesome his death is, the more likely I may say yes, and since it was freed, Charles's death was sure to be good. Just the thought made her pleased. Freed did a mock salute, a cackling laugh echoing through the ruins as he ran out, excited to finally kill someone and bed a fallen angel in exchange. Currently running around the park was Charles, now wearing sweatpants and tank top, truly displaying the body below. Whoever the original was, Charles sure was jacked. Not Arnold Schwarzenegger levels of muscle, but whatever life the original Charles led definitely showed. However, the moment was destined to be ruined. I don't get why you're admiring yourself. I've seen many men, even women with better physiques than yours, and some weren't even my host. Though the idea of a muscular, hot woman did make Charles intrigued, the insult to his pride was immense. You have no idea how painful your words are to a youth like myself. Nonetheless, he continued his run since there wasn't much time left to finish the quest, school and chores taking up most of his time before I could start his workout. I am not going to the penalty zone. After Charles finished running, he'd find himself at the playground itself, deciding this was a better place than anything to finish the rest of the quest requirements. I'll start with squats first. While Charles's body was better than his previous life's, it still was human and hadn't been trained in a while, so the squats took a while to finish. He decided to do sit-ups after finishing his squats, hoping that being able to sit would help, but he didn't expect to feel his gut to hurt so much as he pulled up the quest window. Daily quest strength training. Goal. Push-ups 0-100. Sit-ups 48,100. Squats 100,100. Running 1,010 kilometers. Warning: failure to complete daily quest will result in an appropriate penalty. 24,320. I'm doing okay with time, but I still need to push myself if I want to finish this. After strengthening his resolve, the tank top he was wearing was pulled off and set aside as he went back to finishing his workout. More than 2 hours passed, and he was almost finished, with only around 20 more push-ups to finish within 15 minutes. Labored breaths expressing how exhausted Charles currently was. Almost there. Come on, kid! Do it! The dragon cheered for him, accompanied by the mental image of a white dragon waving flags, cheering him like a fan would for an idol. More sweat dripped down his face at the thought, but he appreciated the sentiment shown. A tingling sensation ran up his back to his skull, pushing himself up and out of the way of a light blade digging into the ground, almost losing his head if not for instinct. Thank you, spider sense. Flipping onto his feet, Charles was able to get a good look at the culprit, cobalt eyes widening in shock. Freed! A cackling laugh from the stray priest unnerved him. Oh? It seems Mr. Macho knows who I am. My reputation precedes me. He immediately Charles moved out of the way again, his leg taking one of the bullets shot by Fried. Crap. He gritted through the pain. Locking back onto Fried's position, it found the stray priest almost in front of him with a light sword up and coming down like an arc. Fried's light sword clashed against steel, burning and melting Charles's blade, forcing him to discard the weapon while kicking the artificial human backwards. Who the hell is he? Do you know him? You could say that. He's a character in DxD that'll show up later during issei's first arc. Charles pulled a shield from inventory, using it to defend against Fried's volley of bullets. Part of the Sigurd Institute with the goal of recreating a true descendant of Sigurd, it was then Charles felt the pressure of Fried's sword pressing down on his shield, only for the former to summon a spear to thrust at the opening Fried showed. However, Fried didn't flinch at the attack, instead enduring the blow to his side and pulling down Charles's shield, the stray priest Fried. A truly insane. Over the top of his shield, Fried's twisted face peered over as he brought down his sword towards Charles's head. Divide! The moment Albion's voice cried out and Fried felt half of his strength leave him, that was when it was time for Charles to begin showing his cards. I'm hesitant to kill him for the sake of plot. Plus I've never actually killed a person while he was sure Fried was the last person to worry about killing and feeling guilty. It was also due to how he's tied to the plot and the development of key characters such as Issei and Kiba. I have already ruined the plot due to being the White Dragon Emperor instead of Vala, but I'm worried about diverting it further and not being able to respond to it in the future. When Fried tried to attack him again, it was Charles exchanging his shield for two swords that caught it, directing it away and spinning around to cut into Fried's arms. Honestly, he could worry about that later. Right now he needs to make sure he stays alive, whether or not Fried lives as well. It's not a good headset to have when in a life or death situation. This may result in your defeat since Fried won't be holding back, neither should you. If anyone knew combat better, it'd be Albion, one of the 4 dragon emperors and the vanishing dragon, rival of the Welsh dragon that has been going on for centuries. When the stray priest roared, releasing another volley of bullets towards Charles, it was the latter that responded with lightning that melted the projectiles mid-flight. Charles wouldn't argue with him, but he wouldn't openly agree with his words either, not yet anyway. Morality. Passing lightning through his weapons, Charles's hair flared up and changed from black to white, the young man's cobalt eyes becoming a tainted red with boiling madness. But thanks to his composure skill, it allowed some part of his sanity to remain, thus Charles's current bout of rage is mostly controlled. And with even the divine dividing manifested, looking more like a fallen being from grace, corrupted by the madness of men. Fair warning. There's a likely chance I'll kill you, not that I'll feel bad. Raising up his right sword, the crackling thunder that raced across his blade seemed almost as if excited. But that my first kill will be ridding this lewd, crazy world of your existence. With a thrust of divine dividing's wings, in almost an instant Charles appeared in front of Fried, both swords raised high and coming down like lightning across their spines. Fried in response raised his light sword, managing to block at the cost of being forced onto a knee and the bones within his arms fracturing, blood spurting from Fried's mouth feeling the weight of Charles's swords. Is this kid a monster or something? How can he be as strong as a low-ranked devil? Fried really doubted his senses and didn't want to doubt them, but he couldn't explain the reason why this child, a human with no demonic power or anything, could exert such strength. I need to get serious. Using his enhanced strength from his Sigurd genetics, he was successful in pushing back Charles's pressure and brought up his blade for a thrust aimed at Charles's heart and lungs. Shield. Following Albion's warning, Charles summoned his shield and blocked Fried's attack, only this time it didn't endure. Now going all out, and utilizing at least the basics David ingrained into him, the stray priest's sword that was of a higher quality broke through the shield's durability. Fortunately for Charles, that was enough time to increase the distance between them, though cutting it close literally, as Fried's sword still pierced the skin of Charles's, but nothing deeper than that. But in that time Fried's sword path whipped and wrapped around Charles's body, inflicting wounds and cuts across it, even one that stabbed through his left shoulder in a way that had become useless. Charles attempted to keep up with his assault, relying on instinct and Albion to avoid or at least minimize his injuries. However, the rate that they gathered grew as Fried chipped away at his stamina. Was he always this skilled? Or is this a side he never got to see? There was no answer, and he wouldn't get any. All he could think about was when the next wound would be. Instinct activated in time for him to move his head backwards, narrowly dodging the light sword flying over his face. Now, dropping his right sword in favor of grappling Fried's sword arm, it was a spin of his heel and utilization of momentum that resulted in Charles's useless arm swinging around into the opponent's face. Yes, using your broken parts to fight. Now that is the relentless spirit of a dragon. Not now, Albion. Unfortunately, the action hardly did anything, only causing Fried to bring up his gun, pressing it against the Ravenet's skull. Someone would ask any last words, but I don't give about that. I'm going to die. While a minute could happen in the blink of an eye, for the young man, however, it was milliseconds that passed, with his tainted red eyes watching the muscles of Fried's finger begin to squeeze. He couldn't explain why, but the day Albion helped awaken his mana core came to mind, almost as if words flowed through his brain like a gentle river. You have the chance to learn lightning, fire, wind, gravity, and light magic. Gravity. He could use gravity. Increase gravity. He roared from the bottom of his lungs. Fried blinked at the berserker's roar, followed by an intense pressure descending around both of them. What the F? And like an invisible hand had come down, both of them were forced to the ground by the immense weight, the gunshot from Fried's gun hardly making it out of the barrel as it dug into the dirt. Brilliant idea, kid! Now finish him! Halting the gravity, both of them shot up from the ground in an attempt to get the first strike on the other, Fried firing his gun once again, while Charles's wings furled in front of him in defense. Then the sound of flesh being pierced could be heard, like that of a pig being gutted as carmine spilled forth, staining the ground in more red from previous strokes of crimson. Both men had impaled one another on each other's respective swords, with Charles's penetrating into Fried's shoulder while the latter's blade unfortunately found true, now currently embedded and sticking out from the back of Charles's neck. With a grin filled with rightful arrogance, the Sigurd clone kicked the young man's body off his blade, currently letting him choke and drown in his own blood. Kid! Kid, no! Albion's killing intent rose, divine dividing's energy feathers glowing brighter as blue light filled the surrounding space. In Charles's fading vision a screen popped up. Daily quest strength training. Goal. Push-ups 87,100. Sit-ups 100,100. Squats 100,100. Running 1,010 kilometers. Warning: failure to complete daily quest will result in an appropriate penalty. 00021. Fried approached Charles's dying body, hand clutching the blade of light while applying pressure on his wound with the other. You were quite the wild dog, but that wasn't enough to defeat me, Fried Selzen. 00015. Meanwhile the young man could only focus on how blood flooded his throat and mouth. However, due the blade having gone out the other side, his neck was broken, ruined, as he could only lay there unable to do anything. 00007. I can't even use a damn potion. While he did possess Lionheart, and would likely get resurrected, the sensation of dying and experiencing it was a horrible thing. Just the memories of them made it hard to sleep most nights for him. I don't want to die again. 00005. Just as Fried was about to walk away, the gray-haired priest felt like he saw Charles's body twitch, like his fingers briefly itched to curl. 00004. Power: perhaps it was a trick of light, maybe he really didn't twitch his fingers. 00003. I need, but he saw it again, how Charles's fingers slowly clenched. 00002. Power: 00001. See you on the other side, kid. 00000. Warning: failure to finish daily quest. Issuing appropriate discipline. Transporting player to penalty zone. As if sensing something amiss, with his sword already heading towards Charles's head to destroy the brain, the area around him broke into graphics of light shattering before consuming him, leaving Fried alone in the park. You mother! Unfortunately, or fortunately, Fried's curses were cut short. In the meantime, Charles was transported to the penalty zone, ready to show him a new whole world of danger in the form of punishment. Only Charles's system screen was left, as it soon began disappearing too, only its contents being visible for but a brief moment as it became light, going on to say, "Congratulations on becoming E rank. Cobalt eyes flutter open, a hand raising up quickly to shield it, unsure what it was that fell gently on his face other than it was wet. He quickly noticed how cold he felt, the sound of crunchy ground that got more compacted the more weight he pressed on it. Even howls of wind made Charles's conclusion rather obvious. Snow. It's snow. You're awake? How are you feeling, kid? Looks like Albion was awake too, but it was obvious what he'd ask next. Charles. What we saw. Please, he cut it short, his voice especially curt. Eyes focused on the palms of his hands resting upon his lap, ever distant and elsewhere, almost as if he was trying to disassociate himself from reality. The dragon gave a hesitant, but agreeing trill that vibrated through Albion's throat, opting to give his partner a moment to catch up to his thoughts. Meanwhile his head was oddly empty, like he didn't dare to think of something. Charles, what happened to you? Kid, watch out. Hardly noticing his instincts flaring and barely even Albion's voice, with a roll to the side and bringing up his swords to block the following attacks, Charles tracked where the attacks came from. Archers. Judging from the arrows on the ground, it seemed likely as a hiss slipped. Following where he felt the pain, the young man found that one of the arrows had found its way into his right shoulder. Again? As of late, getting pierced with arrows was becoming annoying as it became more often, especially encountering an enemy almost every day and almost dying each time for the last 2 weeks. It was the dragon's voice that spoke, then gets stronger rather than complaining. Stuff like this would become less bothersome and occurring if you developed the divine dividing. However, Charles chipped back. Doesn't the aura of a dragon draw in strong people? Doesn't that mean it's also the divine dividing's fault that I keep encountering strong people? That silenced the one who stole supremacy, finally garnering a smile from Charles' face as he cut down another arrow, only to realize something. Is it me or are my senses sharper? I feel faster too? Remembering that he's a different rank now, it was after pulling up the status window did he get an answer to his questions. Status window. Name Charles Lawrence. Titles none. Race human? Status White Dragon Emperor. Rank E. Sacred Gear Divine Dividing. Parameters. Strength E Endurance E. Agility E Mana? Luck F Sense E. Note I realized that I accidentally wrote the parameters all as E when they were meant to be F while Mana was A. Mark. I've gone back to previous chapters and fixed them, but as of this moment his stats are E rank. Did all of my stats, except luck and mana, go up to E? Wait, why the hell is my luck still F? How could his luck be worse than Shiro Amiya's? Maybe Lionheart won't work next time and he'll permanently die. Hold on, something didn't add up. Why was there no notification for Lionheart activating? Congratulations on becoming E rank. The existence of player Charles has become more defined. Due to rank increase, memories lying dormant within your body have become accessible. Viewing. Did my rank going up perhaps heal me of everything? Kinda similar to how in some games, when one levels up, everything including health and resources are restored. But that function only activated whenever he went up a rank, meaning this function was limited and couldn't be utilized to one's advantage. Still a cheat. Grumbled the White Dragon, likely jealous of some of the benefits Charles gets with the system, though internally pleased he had a host with such potential. This also fortunately meant Charles had Lionheart still available, because he was assumingly in the penalty zone judging from the notifications before passing out, though he had mixed emotions currently. While I'm glad it isn't the one from solo leveling, I would have preferred a desert at least. That and likely due to him stocking up on gear for desert exploration. However, in an environment like this, they've essentially become useless and made Charles embarrassed at himself. I wasted most of my gold on it, but now it's useless. He didn't mind dying to the cold right, he was that upset. Stop crying already. I don't think ladies find such things attractive. That was a low blow, Albion. A real low blow. However, they couldn't continue their argument when arrows continued raining from the trees around them, but instead of running Charles stayed to observe. I need to get better at fighting, and the best way is learning to observe my opponent. Though commendable, it would be hard to keep up still as the rate of how fast the arrows came got faster, even after blocking most and enduring some. He noticed something. Player has been inflicted by frost status effect. A frigid cold burrows into your body. Ice arrows. It was painful how the ice arrow dug into his flesh, almost as if the frost tried spreading deeper into his blood. Channeling fire through his hands, he snapped the arrow and, after ducking behind a tree and biting into a branch, pressed the glowing palm of his hand into the wound. MMPH! Cries let out from the boy, having never actually done this before, and began thinking people who've done this must be insane, not knowing he was one of them too now. An intense heat has caused the cold to flee. Passive skill ice resistance LVL3 has been acquired. Looks like he benefited after all thanks to the arrow. Though it was a bit painful, thanks to his previous experience of pain as well as his level 4 pain resistance, it was nothing. You've endured a powerful burn with willpower. Passive skill fire resistance LVL2 has been acquired. A smirk creeped across his face, almost disturbingly so. Oh, should I hurt myself more often to see what I can get? He may be worse than Vala. If Vala was a battle maniac, then Charles could be a full-on masochist with his strong mind to endure pain. But to think about hurting himself to get more skills? He may actually be more insane than Vala. Wait, isn't there a character that? Charles didn't listen to Albion talking to himself, pushing himself off the tree as he ran through the forest while looking at the current quest contents. Quest: survive the penalty zone. Has arrived. Goal: survive within the penalty zone. Failure condition: dying. Failure result: death. Succession reward: time remaining 34,652. Though the reward confuses me, sounds easier said than done. This was the penalty zone and it was a frost environment. Not even 15 minutes in time he's already being attacked by archers, now currently running for his life to survive for 4 hours. Ice resistance has mitigated some of the environmental effects. If it wasn't monsters, it'd be the cold that'd kill him first, even with level 3 ice resistance. If only you had balance breaker, it wouldn't be much of a problem. Albion absent-mindedly said. Inside Charles's head he could mentally picture the dragon lying on his side, watching what Charles was doing while picking his nose without much thought. Heavenly dragon, my. More like a lazy butt dragon. You son of a female dog, take that back. Charles ignored his companion in favor of avoiding another 2 arrows, swinging around to deflect another 2 with his sword. Instinct was now level 3, thus greatly enhancing Charles's E-rank senses, though he could only sense danger and attempt to avoid it like spider sense. But as he got better at using it subconsciously, the more he could begin picking up presences around him, especially those following him, though they were good at hiding themselves. I'm feeling pretty confident. She. A loud cry echoed through the air. The sight of Charles's body being flung could be seen. Fortunately, Charles manifested divine dividing in time, slowly his descent and saving himself from the fall. Catching his breath, the Ravenet's gaze went in the direction he was flung from. Numerous spike-covered roots lashed towards him, frost biting at their tips as he avoided them using his sacred gear to get higher, finally getting a good sight of what attacked him. Ents? I haven't seen those in a long time. The old dragon informed his host, best way to deal with one is with fire, burn away its exterior layer. Charles pulled out another shield to block 3 roots trying to impale him. But the strength of the attacks were stronger than the poor quality iron shield used by goblins, breaking quite easily under the pressure. Crap, folding his wings around, they helped endure the brunt of the attacks. Due to the force, Charles flew backwards once and crashed into the ground. What am I? A frickin' punching bag for monsters. Irritated by the one-sidedness of this fight, dark black hair was bleached and turned into an ethereal white and grew longer until it reached Charles's lower back. Now his gaze filled with madness once more as Berserk came to life. If I burn away its armor, it'll be vulnerable to physical attacks, right? Yes, though with this frigid environment, its resistance to fire may very well be high. Nodding, with divine dividing he blasted forward, converting his mana into fire and covering his arms in flames. The end roared as another volley of roots lashed out, now moving faster and aiming to entangle and crush Charles. But thanks to divine dividing's speed he's able to avoid most of them. Grabbing one of the roots flying past him, with his current enhanced strength through Berserk and absorbing the Ent's divided power, pulled back to tear off the root. Your strength has improved, but if you had balance breaker, this would far much easier, commented the vanishing dragon, once more yelling out divide and adding it to Charles's power while dispersing it evenly around them. Swinging around the torn-off root tendril, it was brought up and down upon the end, breaking part of the ground beneath it. Could you quiet it? I'm winning, aren't I? Hardly. Without enough time to express his confusion, more tendrils out and taking advantage of the moment, bound the boy up with an inescapable hold. Even with his E-rank strength enhanced by berserk and divine dividing, he couldn't free himself. Damn it! I should be at home relaxing. New parts. He didn't want this. He didn't want to fight. He didn't want the system, the divine dividing. He didn't dream of fighting fallen angels or stray priests. All he wanted to do was live life outside of the four walls he looked at for 10 years wasting away in a room and dying in that same room not long ago. But he was gifted with a second chance at life, and he really didn't want to waste it. But fate had plans for him, replacing the White Dragon Emperor and inheriting a system, being targeted by fallen angels and stray priests. Even now he was struggling for his life, trying to escape the hold of the ent that brought his bound body closer to its face. Just the sight of it opening its wood mouth to reveal flesh beneath was something he didn't want to see. So was it good luck or bad luck? He didn't know. He didn't know if he would ever get an answer. But as the sun above shone bathed him in its light, he did know one thing. I want to see tomorrow. Channeling his mana throughout his body, magical power began to hum as a faint white glow outlined the boy's body, those cobalt eyes gaining a trace of gold. Sparks appeared briefly, and then a few more, and then more appearing again. Clouds overhead gathered like an omen, going unnoticed by the ent as it brought him closer. The sparks shooting throughout his body hummed intensely. Thunder roared, followed by lightning striking the land, before stopping briefly for but a moment. And then with a cracking boom, the heavens let fall a massive bolt of lightning, raining down upon both Charles and the ent. Screeching cries echoed through the forest. However, it was only the ent that expressed agony, for Charles. His eyes glowed and became an iridescent light, lightning flowing around him like it was alive. And that he was unharmed, the ent's limbs breaking down, becoming nothing more than ash as Charles slowly descended back onto the ground. Not much else happened. The lightning around him continued to flow, while his gaze remained unmoving, like he wasn't there. A whistling sound wisped, cutting through the air towards its target, Charles's head. Only for no blood to spill nor gasp of pain, only Charles's hand having grabbed the arrow mid-flight, snapping it in two as his head finally moved. Blue lightning, with their center resembling the whiteness of clouds, spread out from a wave of Charles's hand and in the direction where the arrow was shot from. In the trees, ice elves stood on tree branches, with most becoming engulfed in the sea of lightning, while few escaped in time with their lives. More arrows were shot, these ones made of ice as well like the before. However, the unconscious Charles waved his hand with a simple gesture, effortlessly erasing the projectiles, further putting the ice elves on edge. One of them spoke an unknown language, but it was clear what he had said. With one hand pointing forward, the other ice elves realized that Charles had disappeared. However, there were no tracks in the snow nor any other sign of where he went. Soon enough choking could be heard, numerous eyes looking in the same direction, and finding one of their own has had their head impaled by a sword. And standing behind them was Charles, a steel sword in hand as blood dripped down its cold, steel spine as the ice elf on its blades slowly returned to oblivion. They shot arrows at Charles again, regardless of whether they hit their brethren or not. However, the young man maliciously used its body as a shield to defend himself. While most of them kept Charles occupied with ranged attacks, two ice elves broke from the group and leaped around to perform a pincer attack, the pair aiming to kill the human from either side. One got there faster, rushing up with twin daggers in hand, with their naturally stronger body to lunge towards Charles. But their blades met resistance in the form of divine dividing's wings, blocking the attack and protecting Charles. Divide! Albion's voice rang out, the elf's power divided in half, in return strengthening the Ravenet. Due to elves being creatures more naturally aligned to mana, the divided power was quite strong, which gave Charles a significant boost in power. In mere seconds, with a faster speed enhanced by berserk and the absorbed mana, the dagger-wielding elf's head was separated from its shoulders after the steel sword's arc flew true. Seeing this and becoming enraged, the other elf that was attacking from back brought down its sword, mana crackling across its cold blade before slamming down. It was enough to destroy the tree branch Charles standing on, but the attack didn't hit him as he disappeared once again. On guard, it raised its sword in defense while backing off, attempting to get to a better vantage point. However, confusion ran through its mind, wondering why everything turned upside down, and was rising, only to finally realize with its final thoughts. Their head was also cut off, falling to the snow-blanketed ground below. Upon seeing another brother lose their head, the one most likely leading the group cursed in their native language, eyes full of what could only be hatred. Meanwhile, Charles put some distance between them, landing on a higher tree branch far from them. When attempting to take a step, he stumbled and fell, their glowing eyes returning back to normal. Ah crap, everything hurts. Holding the crown of his head, labored breaths froze in the frigid air as he leaned against the massive tree's trunk. Kid? Kid! Have you finally come back to your senses? Despite recoiling from Albion's loud voice, he did feel better when noticing it was because of concern. I guess so, though I don't know what you're talking about. It was true, everything went black and he couldn't remember much besides being stuck in an Ent's grasp, though it appears he was freed. You really don't remember? After you got struck by lightning, the Ent was destroyed but you were unharmed. Not long after, the ice elves likely from earlier found you and tried to kill you, only for you to completely go sicko the next second and kill most of them. Huh! Charles's face expressed his disbelief. How the hell could he fight ice elves if he was only E rank, which was on the level of low-class devil, especially apparently killing most of them? Is that why my body hurts so much? That would explain the immense amount of pain he was feeling. Even the healing potion amplified by the Lionheart was slower in recovery than expected. Yeah, your body was probably pushed to its limits when you, I dunno, got possessed? Even the vanishing dragon didn't know what exactly happened. When Charles went unconscious and started to fight the ice elves, he tried to wake up Charles to no avail. It was like my voice couldn't reach him. While the pair was trying to wrap their minds around the situation, a system notification appeared and drew their attention. A new power has been acquired. Passive skill Thunder Incarnation has been acquired. Name Thunder Incarnation. Type Passive Conditional. A skill that turns one into lightning itself. The user's body becomes imbued with the power of the storm, increasing their power and infusing every attack with the lightning attribute. Condition to use unknown. User may lose consciousness. Holy crap. Holy crap. Both human and dragon said at the same time, surprised by the newly acquired skill and its abilities. That would help explain why you could fight the ice elves too, this skill likely playing a hand in boosting your overall abilities. Nodding, most likely. No, definitely. He was still surprised this skill was much better than Berserk in his opinion. The only disappointing part is the fact it's a conditional passive, and that the condition was unknown, meaning he couldn't actively use it to replace the Berserk skill. If I could figure out the condition, then I wouldn't be getting hurt as often. While Berserk had the benefit of increasing his physical abilities, it also had the flaw of causing him to lose his mind and made his rationality disappear. Though this was alleviated with the composure skill, it still made him take more damage than he'd like. In front of Charles, an ice arrow embedded itself into the tree beside him, immediately ducking down to avoid the other arrows. Only two hit him, one in the shoulder and the other in his lower back. Damn, that hurts so much. Even with his resistance skills, the pain was still a lot, though not the worst he's endured. It still made it uncomfortable, especially the one in his lower back. We need to get out of here. Not wasting another second, the Ravenet bolted through the trees, trying not to use too much of his remaining mana since Thunder Incarnation drained a significant portion of it. While running away from the remaining ice elves, he summoned the system menu and pulled up the quest window to see the remaining time. Quest: survive the penalty zone. Goal: survive within the penalty zone. Failure condition: dying. Failure result: death. Succession reward: time remaining 015421. I've got less than 2 hours to go. Though it wasn't the best news, and he wasn't confident, Charles didn't intend on giving up. So with every ounce of remaining strength, he pushed harder to keep ahead of his pursuers, determined to escape the penalty zone alive. I think we finally lost them. Charles struggled to get the words out, exhaustion clinging to him like a sickness, the boy having taken refuge within a small burrow to rest. Meanwhile the dragon nodded. I think we did. Though you had to use lightning magic in tandem with divine dividing, it was worth it, as I think they properly ate our dust. That got a chuckle from the young Ravenettes, slightly lightening up their situation despite how bad it is. We have about an hour or so left until we can leave. Looking at the system again before swiping away, he leaned back against the dirt wall and let himself relax for a moment. With nothing much else to do, the young man tried to think of something that would help pass the time. I could check my status window again. Shrugging his shoulders, the system menu popped up once more, allowing Charles to swipe to his status window and check it out. Status window. Name Charles Lawrence. Titles none. Race human? Class? Hidden. Status White Dragon Emperor. Rank E. Sacred Gear Divine Dividing. Parameters. Strength E Endurance E. Agility E Mana? Luck F Sense E. There were two things that he noticed immediately now looking at it properly: his class. And his race. Albion, are you seeing this? Deep down he hoped he was hallucinating, but the dragon didn't give him the answer he wanted. I am. Why does your race have a question mark next to it? Two don't know, and he wasn't sure if he would know. Honestly, most wouldn't be disturbed that they weren't human if they got reincarnated. But for Charles, though, it meant trouble. Am I a Cambion? Or maybe a demigod? Despite how cool that would be and powers he could get, for someone that truly didn't want to be involved with the supernatural and its factions, if he was part human and part something, then it meant he would be dragged into someone's problems. First, I found out I have a system and divine dividing. Now there's a chance I'm not even human? Oh, and Charles was someone that wanted to stay human, never finding much interest in being another species. That would mean inheriting their weaknesses. And if he was part devil, then he would be susceptible to holy power such as angels, holy swords, and even crosses. Which was ironic for someone that was religious. Though it worked out for Asia in the series, it wouldn't mean much until then, since heaven was still hostile towards the underworld. And if he was a demigod, well, that was a whole other can of beans he didn't want to open. The young man, having studied a lot about mythology and their gods and trusting him, he didn't want to be related to any deity. Don't panic, kid. I'll take a look through your body and see what I can find, though I wouldn't mind if you were part dragon. Then that would be both generic and bad. I don't want to be a battle maniac. Though the vanishing dragon wanted to say not every dragon was about fighting, he stopped himself short and thought hard about his race, thus prompting himself to stay quiet lest he wanted Charles to prove him wrong. Sighing, his cobalt eyes were focused on the screen in front of him. We'll focus on that later. For now, let's take a look at my class. Where his class should be was question marks and words saying it was hidden. Humming in thought, he clicked it, and another screen popped up. Do you wish to reveal your class? YN. Taking a deep breath, he nodded and clicked yes, with the screen disappearing. Now back on his status window, only with a notification appearing and his class now revealed. New information has been revealed. Status window. Name Charles Lawrence. Titles none. Race human? Class Beast Hunter New. Status White Dragon Emperor. Rank E. Sacred Gear Divine Dividing. Parameters. Strength E Endurance E. Agility E Mana? Luck F Sense E. Beast Hunter? That's a unique class if I've ever seen one. He thought maybe he would get Magician or something, but he didn't expect to get a class known as Beast Hunter. However, pulling up his class skill, it now made sense why he had it. Name Praying Strike. Type Passive Class. A skill born from the desire to hunt monsters. It accumulates power the more monsters are killed with the skill. So I'm doing a hunter playthrough basically, kinda like Bloodborne or something. Memories of this took him back to when he played it, and all of the moments he raged when dying to a boss. But also the fun he had challenged himself since he had nothing better to do. As he was reminiscing about his past life, another notification appeared and pulled his attention back to reality. New information has been revealed. Name Hunter's Nature. Type Passive Class. A skill born from a hunter's mindset to focus on the hunt. Makes one desire to hunt strong prey. The stronger they are, the more provoked the hunter's nature becomes in response. It was a skill. And an interesting one at that, though not as impressive as Thunder Incarnation or Praying Strike. It was apparently his passive class skill. Wait, is this another reason why I keep getting into bad situations? Because I've been affected by this passive skill? It would further explain why Berserk hasn't been as tamed by the composure like he hoped, It was Hunter's nature that quietly nudged him more into combat and unnecessary situations. No wonder why I still fought the ant despite wanting to run away. He was constantly looking for a worthy prey to hunt. But wouldn't a good hunter know when something isn't huntable? Perhaps that's why I'm a beast hunter. I am something that hunts the impossible. Well, crap. More problems to deal with in the future. There may be a moment where Hunter's nature will make him fight an opponent that he has no chance against, most likely leading him having to use Lionheart's resurrection ability, though that may be even worse if he's stuck in a boss room or something. Trapped in a room, having used your resurrection ability, and no way out, he'll likely die for real as a result. And he didn't die again. This is why I didn't want to get stronger. It always leads to more trouble than it's worth. There goes his chances of living a normal life again. Now he may not get a girlfriend if he's focused only on hunting monsters and risking his life for what? Thrills? Fun? He wouldn't know. After all, he didn't make this system nor choose a class of his own, having gotten stuck with Beast Hunter from the beginning. Let's just focus on getting out of here alive. Sighing in reluctant acceptance, he got up and looked out of the burrow to see if it was safe before taking a step outside. Just a little while more and go home. A massive quake rampaged through the area. The sounds of running was akin to the announcement of thunder, almost like a disaster was approaching. And you wouldn't be exactly wrong. From the trees appeared Charles with Divine Dividing, once again covered in more blood and wounds, but that wasn't what caused the rumbling. It was right behind him, from the trees as well, burst forth a large humanoid creature that stood almost as tall as these monolith-like trees. It was a giant, more specifically a Jotun. And a hungry one at that too. In hand it was carrying a dead truck like a club covered in dried blood, as it continued chasing after the boy. ING. A flurry of swears spilled from Charles's mouth, for good reason, as the Jotun surprisingly was able to keep up with him, almost catching the Ravenet with its club mid-swing. Ah, so we are in Jotunheim. No wonder it seemed familiar, at least a very good recreation of it. There was an expression of respect and intrigue upon his face, almost curious who could accomplish such a thing. Meanwhile, Charles continued flying for his life, narrowly avoiding its club swings throughout the forest. Why are you acting so calm? I'm about to end up as this thing's lunch. With your size? I would hardly think you'd. Don't measure me. Help me. Ah, crap. One of its swings clipped Divine Dividing's right wing. Now with no balance, Charles was descending fast back to the earth below, and right at the giant's feet at this rate. I can't kill a giant. I barely scratched those ants earlier, and that was thanks to whatever that foreign power may be. To be honest, the sight of such a massive thing approaching him with the intent to devour him, it was terrifying. But he didn't feel fear, not like normal, but instead felt his blood boil, almost like he was itching to fight it. He tried to move, but his body wanted nothing more to fight, especially after being provoked. No! I'm not going to succumb to it again. The giant got closer, the earth shaking with every crash of its feet. Composure has leveled up by 1. Now closer, the giant, with its eyes set on the human, lunged forward with its hands stretched towards Charles to snatch him up. Move! Composure has mitigated some of Hunter's nature. The wings of Divine Dividing glowed brighter, with an expulsion of energy moving Charles just in time to avoid the giant, watching it crash face first into the ground after missing. Flying high into the sky, initially Charles was about to leave if it wasn't for Albion's voice. Use your lightning magic, kid! We can kill it! Are you insane, Albion? We should be leaving. With Divine Dividing, he attempted to leave, but the dragon urged him further. Giants never forget a scent. It'll track you down until you're dead or we escape, and you won't get far in your current condition. Kill it here and get the experience to level up. Despite not favoring the choice to follow the White Dragon's order, Charles pulled and channeled any mana remaining within his body, and formed a spear of lightning in his hand. A foreign yet familiar power courses through your body. Attribute has been added to Lightning Spear. Warning! The current body's mana circuits haven't adapted to such an amount of foreign yet familiar power yet. Damage to body is likely. It is recommended to halt performing such an action. Charles ignored the notifications and warnings that appeared. The giant slowly began to get up as storm clouds appeared above. Now, with the spear held up high and aloft above the young man's head, He put every remaining ounce of strength combined with his mana into this attack as the lightning destroyed his remaining clothes. Divine judgment has arrived. Stay down! Descending from the sky like wrath incarnate, strikes of lightning followed from the hanging clouds behind the larger bolt, merging and adding onto its power as it broke the sound barrier. It didn't even have enough time to scream. All the giant saw was lightning coming down from above, reminding it of an old enemy that gave rise to a new emotion that giants never once held since the very beginning until Set etched it into their very beings. Fear. And it was fear that this giant felt as this human resembled the thunder god from ages past. Everything around was blasted back from the force, even Charles barely endured it even in the sky, as a mushroom cloud of smoke rose up high. Coughing, he took in everything. Did I do that? Ruin. That's best what you could describe the area, only the charred remains of the giant, after its head was basically incinerated, laid within the crater from the aftermath. Yes. There seems to be more to you than originally thought. But there is one thing I'm for sure. Why he couldn't finish his sentence, not even the thought that he had as agonizing screams spilled out, arcs of magical energy running and shooting out from his body. Player has experienced mana overload. This is going to be nothing for what we'll face in the future. Albion watched as Charles fell from the sky, internally guiding the divine dividing to slow his descent, at least stopping the kid from dying in the fall. Though it still wasn't a soft landing, crashing into the ground with a painful slam, likely breaking a few ribs and such. Nothing a healing potion plus Lionheart's amplifier trait couldn't fix. Player has achieved an impossible feat at their current rank. Calculating rewards for such an achievement, with everything fried from using too much mana, and his body finally hitting its limits, the notifications went unnoticed as Charles's consciousness was fading. You did good, kid. Time's almost up, so we'll be home soon. I can't wait to see what you'll get for killing a giant. It was odd how it was the dragon that was more happy than the system's host, though that may be due to the latter's brain likely being mush after doing another stupid thing. It should have left. He was going to curse Albion after recovering. No, he was going to torture the dragon for telling him to do such a thing. A soft thud could be heard, followed by another and then another, most likely being something alive. HM? Oh. Charles, you've got to run. Wait, you can't. Hearing the dragon's reaction didn't ease Charles's mind, feeling the ground jump with every step of whatever it was as he felt something big touch him. Panic flowed through him. But instead of being eaten alive, it flipped him over and let him get a good look. A weasel? Ichneumon! It's a frickin' Ichneumon! I'm going to die! Ichneumon? What was that? Pain ran through him as the creature bit into him, lifting the boy up and whipping him around. As more pain stacked upon what he was already feeling, likely going to lead to him dying of shock, Charles attempted to break free. And he couldn't do a thing about it. Even with his fried senses, Charles could feel that he was in the air, the Ichneumon having tossed him aside and into a tree. Initially, Charles wanted to see if maybe Albion could control divine dividing again, but I'm going to die. While Albion was being useless while screaming bloody murder in this situation, the carmine-painted young man continued trying to move his body, even just a single finger. Slumped against the tree, he came to accept that he was going to die, that he would have to use Lionheart. But if it devours me, will I regenerate within its stomach? He still didn't know what the ability was capable of doing, if it just completely rebuilt his body from his old one or something, if he revived while being inside the Ichneumon. It would be better to just die. Since his vision has completely faded, blinded both from blood and exhaustion, there was nothing he could do. However, he didn't notice the system pop up again. Penalty quest: survive the penalty zone. Goal: survive within the penalty zone. Failure condition: dying. Failure result: death. Succession reward: time remaining 0.00057. It once more approached Charles's, jaws stained with his blood and also most likely the giants from choosing to feast on it instead of him, the Ichneumon now likely going to either munch on him or take him as a snack for later. Standing before Charles, its breath hit the boy's face, laced with the smell of decay and blood fresh upon its lips. I really. 0.00007. The monster stood on its hind legs, reaching forward with its front legs, lifting the boy up from the floor. Do have. 00004. Snapping open its jaws, hot breath was visible in this cold place, bringing up the boy to its mouth to devour him. Bad luck. 00003. 00002. 00001. 00000. Penalty quest survive. The penalty zone has been cleared, transporting player back to real world. Just as Charles finally lost consciousness and the creature bit down, only blue particles remained as the young man appeared back in the park. Unconscious and alone, the young man lay there with his body completely wrecked, but alive. Clear reward has arrived. Dungeon key has been acquired. And this was just the beginning of his story. Screams rang throughout the abandoned church's arch ceiling, ringing out the hole in the building from a certain fallen angel, followed by cries of agony. Please! Please just kill me! Hanging upon a cross was a young woman, currently crucified as Rainier stood in front of her, a hand digging into the woman's stomach as a pink light spilled out. Quit whining. You'll be dead soon enough. However, the human girl didn't listen, too busy screaming as her spiritual structure was being pulled at and ruined, as if Rainier was trying to find something. Ah! Blood spurted from her eyes, mouth and ears, now drowning in her own blood as Rainier tore out something from her stomach, a bow made of pink light. As the girl finally started to die, the fallen angel couldn't care as she examined the bow, her soft lips curling up into a cruel grin. Finally. A useful sacred gear, the staring pink. Looks like you struck gold, Rainier. Donasek, another fallen angel, commented, whistling at the sacred gear in her hand, noticing how its pink light hummed. Bah! The human finally shut up? A little girl wearing a gothic Lolita outfit scoffed, her legs hanging over the edge as she sat up in the rafters. Meanwhile, the other fallen angel, this one being a very tall woman with blue hair, shirt not fully buttoned up and exposing an unnecessary amount of cleavage. Are you sure it's wise to be taking sacred gears without the higher-ups' permission? She wasn't wrong to ask. While she hardly held any love for humans anymore, Calawarner didn't want to lose her life for nothing. But she was also getting tired of being treated as lesser compared to higher-rank fallen, though she failed to see the irony between this and her treatment towards humans. Rainier scoffed in response. The chains holding up the deceased girl's body disappeared before she fell to the ground, almost like garbage at her feet as she kicked away like it was disgusting. Don't worry. They're too busy with whatever bull they have, plus we have one of them supporting us. A long line of doors opening drew attention. Currently entering into the church was none other than Fried Selzen himself. However, that wasn't what drew most of their attention. Whoa! What the hell happened to you? Donasek looked the stray priest up and down, honestly surprised to see such a psychopath like Fried in such a condition. Meanwhile, said priest clicked his tongue, finger pointed towards the fallen angels. Off. I'm in no mood for you, you bag of s. But before he could leave, Rainier appeared behind him with a hand on his shoulder. Now. No need to be rude, just tell me if you were successful or not? Though she held a smile, it hardly reached her eyes as Fried growled before finally answering. No. The stain used some weird trick to escape, ran off like a ing coward with an instinctive move. Fried pulled out his sword and hid away the light dagger pointed at his back, jumping back with a red face. What the hell? Are you trying to kill me? Oh, I really want to right now. Those violet eyes of hers reflected what she felt, boiling rage, both at Fried and Charles Lawrence. Though mostly the latter, it was currently directed towards Fried right now. How in Azazel's name did a normal human escape someone like Fried? It made no sense. Last time she saw him, the boy had no kind of power besides what the sacred gear leaked out. Could he have awakened it, and that's why he's alive? She honestly had no clue, but even if he did, there's no way he could escape Fried, someone infamous for hunting down people. What the kind of sacred gear could he have? One that revives him and has an escape power? As someone that studied underneath Azazel and learned about numerous sacred gears, there wasn't one that popped into mind unless it was the Longinus-type Sephiroth Gruul. But she didn't remember it having anything else besides its ability to control souls as far as she could remember. I have no choice. Putting a hand up to her ear, a magic circle was conjured against it. She didn't want to use his help, especially since he would do anything to undermine her. But if she could work something out with him, perhaps it could work. But to have Darwick take care of him. Soon the magic circle hummed, awaiting for something to happen. "What do you want, Rainier?" And on the other line was Darwick, currently watching from the sky as a woman walked through a farmer's market. That's the end. Thanks for listening.